Hello everybody, this is Snarist and welcome back to the channel. This is a new series or just a single video. This is my Amnesia the Dark Descent hard mode walkthrough, no deaths. And Amnesia the Dark Descent is a pretty special game, at least to me. It's probably my favourite horror game, and I meant to release this on Halloween, but it was already on my desktop and I just figured I might as well get through it. Because lately I've had a bad string of playing certain games and I'm just not really feeling their playthrough, I'm not really feeling their walkthrough, and all in all I was just looking for just a good game to relax into, get a good series going. And while I haven't played Amnesia for maybe a few years now, I still remember the puzzles and how to solve them. The only tricky part I found was just trying to navigate it through a couple different areas and just trying to remember where all the different rooms and locations were. But I was quite surprised to find out that not only did I finish this in relatively quick time, but what you're seeing here on the total runtime is everything that I've done all in one go. There's the occasional pause whenever I need to check something or I need to make a save, but all in all this is a all the way through one-time playthrough. And what hard mode in Amnesia actually is I believe the enemies are a lot more aware of you. Not only are they a lot more aware of you, but they're also a little bit faster. But the core of why it's difficult is because of the lack of an autosave or a saving mechanic. See, when you go through each chapter of the game, which it doesn't tell you when each chapter gets struck, but if you're in a chapter throughout the game and you get killed, whether it's by the monster or by losing all your sanity, then you go back to the beginning of that chapter. So I didn't realize that until after I'd already finished, but knowing that that's the case, it just makes things all the better for me, because I was worried about honestly nothing. So yeah, if you're in the middle of a chapter and you end up getting killed, then you'll go back to the beginning of a new... Sorry, hold on. Yes, I'm just adjusting the settings because I wanted to try and figure out how to rotate certain objects and I forgot how to do it on controller. And then I had to do it on mouse and keyboard. I'll have to do it eventually a bit later on, but yeah. Hard mode is pretty much... Yeah, if you die during a chapter, you've got to go back to the beginning of the chapter, unless you give up 4 tinderboxes to make a save, a manual save wherever you want. And the problem with that is that there's a lot less oil and tinderboxes on hard mode. So I had no problem finding tons of oil. In fact, I got quite reckless with my use of oil in the lamp later on in the game, but you'll notice throughout it, I maybe only found enough tinderboxes to make about 3 saves. I know there's probably some other tinderboxes I ended up missing, but yeah, 3 or 4 saves is the most that you can make. So this is more or less a game that you have to pretty much do in one shot, or maybe in 2 goes, if you want the best chance of getting through it, no problem. Because the vast majority of the challenge is just in the puzzles, trying to figure out where everything is, and knowing how to solve it effectively without running into as many threats as you can. And that's more or less what this walkthrough is going to be, just helping you solve all the puzzles, getting through it nice and quick. And whenever you do encounter a monster or some sort of danger, I'll show you how to get through it nice and easy. And so yeah, tinderboxes are very hard to come by. A lot of areas are very tricky, but I think what makes this more difficult than anything else is not the fact that you go back to the beginning of a chapter if you die, or at least back to the last manual save you made. It's the fact that your sanity, it can kill you. So if your sanity drops down to the point where you're supposed to be like crawling on the floor and your noise gets like worry or sort of cancelled out, then instead of rolling around on the floor for a few seconds before you get back up again, you know, it'll be game over and you'll die. But because this is a no death walkthrough, this wasn't actually intended. Like, I didn't intend for it to be no deaths, but it just so happened I didn't get killed, so it all worked out in the end. And when going through it, I didn't realise that you could get a save from the beginning of a chapter, which definitely would have allowed me to save some tinderboxes. So if I find more than what you do, you should find enough tinderboxes on your way through the game to make at least 2 manual saves of your own kind, but for most of the game you can get through it pretty easily without having to use tinderboxes at all. And when you realise just how few of them there are, you don't actually need them to light any specific areas or tables and all that. But what I would recommend is when you're looking around, just lightly tap the button to light the lamp. Now I'm looking over the video footage right now in the editor that I use, and it's very, very dark and it's hard for me to see anything, and I haven't got the volume on because I don't want the feedback to go through the headphones or the microphone. But you know, I'll do my best to guide you guys through this from what I remember hearing at the time, because there's going to be a few areas where I definitely need to talk a lot about what happens. But yeah, just this game is fantastic. I remember playing it, well, not playing it for the first time, but I remember hearing about it back when I was in college, and you know, a lot of through PewDiePie and all that, he got famous as one of the, you know, besides Minecraft, it was also this game that made him quite famous. And so a lot of kids at my age and even a little bit older started getting into Amnesia as well, giving it more exposure. And while it definitely released other sequels later on throughout the years, I still think this is was it Frictional Games? I still think this is their best one. So yeah, I'm sorry, whenever there has this flashback sequence right here, yeah, everything goes like dark and dim. Something I tried to do, which I don't know if this works or not, but when it comes to that flashback sequences, in most cases I actually go through and I try to push through certain areas, because when I push through certain areas with that flashback mode on, I feel like it gave me some protection against any threats that might spawn in, or I might be able to cancel out some spawns, because technically you can't run away from any threats while you're in that mode, because you slow down to a walk. And another thing you have to keep an eye out for is the fact that when you're in darkness, it makes this weird sort of crinkling sound, and you know, your vision starts getting a little bit blurry. But not only that, but you're usually alright staying in the darkness for a little while, but if you sit in the darkness and just stay there for a few minutes, eventually your sanity will drop down to a different level. It'll be like crystal clear, then it'll be a slight headache, and then hands are shaking, head is pounding, and then like ... and then after that it'll be death. And so how you lose sanity is if you stay in the darkness for too long without any sort of light source, whether it's in the lamp or whatever. And I was being quite conservative with my lamp, but you'll see later on that I've actually done rather well for myself in saving tons of oil, and I get pretty reckless with it at the end, and I still have plenty left over. So if you feel like you need to put on the lamp a little bit more often, then don't be afraid to. Keep in mind that if you're close enough to a monster, it will see the lamp light, but for the most part you can, as long as you're not standing up and as long as you're not looking at them, then you'll be alright. See, by accident or by chance you'll come across certain bizarre things, like the shadow makes like a roar, or an earthquake happens, or the building shakes, or that sort of gelatinous mess comes out of the walls and stuff, or if you see some like supernatural shit happening, then it'll cause Daniel to get a bit panicked. And when that happens, or if you look at the monster for too long, or when he shows up, you know, all these things, or you interact with an object and you accidentally trigger some sort of supernatural event, which doesn't harm you, but it can lower your sanity if you interact with it too much. That's why there are certain notes you'll notice that I can quite clearly pick up, and they're meant to be picked up, but I don't pick them up just in case it triggers my sanity to drop lower. So, learning from the last playthrough I've done of this game on hard mode before, which I have, which is why I'm able to get through this pretty quickly, is because I've done this before, and I know what picking up certain notes, or opening certain drawers or cupboards, or going through certain doors, or at least trying to open certain objects and obstacles, I know what it does and what it triggers. So sometimes there'll be a mistake, sometimes there won't be. You know, the key is just to not look at whatever's coming, and if you happen to be like pursued by a monster, if it doesn't notice you yet and it's moving towards your location, the best thing you can do is pretty much just sit in the corner, keep your light off, and just look away from it and look to the corner. There's going to be a couple of really close calls going forward, and I'll do my best to commentate over it, because I'm having a really hard time through this video editor, just seeing the footage. I thought about turning up the brightness, but I figured it might also ruin the experience a little bit. So I don't know how well this is going to look for you guys, but yeah. By the way, whenever you solve a puzzle like that, and you see that blue flash, it doesn't always happen, but your sanity will either be restored to crystal clear or it'll go up the next level. So the more key items you find, the more puzzles you solve, the better it'll be for your sanity. So you make progress, you get your sanity back. And so it leads to this pretty interesting dynamic of, you know, once your sanity is the best that it can be within a certain area you're a part of, that's when you need to tackle the worst areas, because eventually you'll be able to branch off into multiple parts and go around to different rooms and different locations, and you need to pick the worst of them to deal with first while your sanity is still intact. Otherwise, you're definitely going to suffer big time. So this is another sort of mistake I made here, because in this room there's going to be a note you can pick up, and it'll trigger an event where Daniel will be reliving the events of getting stuck in the cave where he found the orb. Just like he's starting to fall over and collapse, and then it leaves this little bit of a story segment, and I realise, even though it doesn't actually drop my sanity and it doesn't do much, it just adds more to the story. I probably could have saved a couple of minutes by not bothering with it at all. So earlier on, the game's pretty easy in this first area here. I'm still not 100% sure if I'm going to do this all in one recording and then break it up into multiple videos to show you that, you know, if you happen to get killed at the beginning, or sorry, no, if you happen to get killed within a certain chapter and you have to go back to the beginning of the chapter, at least if you've been following along with the progress that I've made and you've been picking up what I've been picking up and doing what I've been doing, then you'll know exactly what to do and where to go when you start back at that chapter. Now, I don't know how this works exactly, but when you come across certain threats, especially if it's in the beginning of the chapter, if you get killed, usually it starts you off at the beginning of a certain checkpoint or even the beginning of the chapter, but the monster that you get killed by doesn't always appear there, because if you notice the messages when you do get killed, there's like a white scribble of text telling you like a bit of advice, and then it's almost as if Daniel wakes up, and that's because the shadow, despite wanting to hunt him down, is still keeping him alive. It actually keeps him alive to give him the courage to move forward and keep on going until Alexander is dealt with. Alexander, sorry. But I don't know if that would apply necessarily to the... I don't know if that would apply to the permadeath stipulation for this mode. But yeah, all in all, besides the puzzle solving, there's maybe only like 4 or 5 really tough sequences that warrant any kind of challenge. Otherwise, for the most part, it's not that bad of a mode. I think the most annoying thing for a lot of people is just trying to remember where all the puzzles and all that are. So to get into this room, you need to pick up a rock and you need to throw it until it breaks the wooden barricade that's blocking your way into that sort of library study area, and then you need to pull all the 3 books back so you can unlock this room, and you need to grab a key from off the top of the desk. Now, I didn't open the side drawer, which I thought was going to have like a bunch of human skulls fall out of the side of it, which turns out is actually in a different part of the castle, which I opened by accident because I didn't want to drain my sanity anymore. But I'm pretty sure it had like some sort of special, one of those, I think it had one of those cylinder, like stone tablet thing, stone cylinder things with the blue gem in it. By the way, in this part here, it forces you to come out to this open area here. If you go out fast enough, and you come out through the middle section like I just did, and you look to the right, you'll actually be able to see the silhouette of the monster, the most common monster in the game. I forgot what they're called, but yeah, you can see him wandering by, which gives your sanity more of a drop than it already did before. But if you come out of it in the far left side as early as you can, you'll actually run into an apparition of the monster, and it'll poof into dust before it can actually get to you. So it's like an illusion. By the way, this stuff here is the manifestation of the shadow. It's like this red looking jelly thing. Now, I took damage from it already, because sometimes when you're jumping up and trying to get over it, you'll land on it by accident and then it'll damage you, but other times you'll walk over it and it doesn't do any damage until like maybe a couple of seconds later. It's really awkward to deal with and get around, and plus for some reason whenever you're like trying to get around it and it hits you, it doesn't sound particularly loud, but it just, I don't know, it just kind of gets to me. And I'm a little bit worried here in the beginning of the game because my sanity, as you saw from the inventory screen, it's already on the second to lowest level that I can handle before I end up getting killed, and I already got damaged a couple times, so I'm wounded. By the way, this is the area you'll find laudanum in, and laudanum is like this sort of greyish green bottle that acts as your health. So you'll have all is good for your health, and then you'll go down to a few cuts and bruises, and then it'll be wound is bleeding quite badly, and then it'll go barely conscious. And then after that, you'll be dead. Barely conscious, I've only hit that state once in this entire game, in this playthrough here. Something you've got to keep in mind as well is that the regular monsters and the water monsters do the exact same damage as each other, but then you've got the brutes that do this weird sort of like animalistic, like grunting thing with like that mechanical sound to it, and they're big, they're generally pretty fast, and they're by far the most dangerous variant of all the monsters, and it also one-shot kills you. So yeah, you do not want to get caught out by those things, because I've had a couple of close encounters in this playthrough, so if you learn from my mistakes, then you should be able to get through it no problem. So yeah, I apologise again if this is really hard to see with how dark it is. I figured that the lighting and adjustment, the lighting would adjust more in the preview footage in the actual video itself rather than what I could see. But I don't know how true that's really going to be. So where I've gone into is I've gone down to the wine cellar, and there's a few different areas you can go into. If you go directly underneath the stairs and you go into this area here, the room I'm just wandering out of right now, when you go up to it, try your best to, as soon as you go down to the very bottom of the stairs, it'll trigger like a flashback sequence, and you want to go into that room down below as soon as you can, because then it can trigger the sort of the ghostly haunting sounds of Wilhelm's men trying to like break out of the wine cellar. And so I'm hoping that would have shielded me against me losing my sanity even further. By the way, those little oil, I forgot what they're called, they're like oil sort of stands there. You'll find a few of them throughout the game, but they barely have any oil in them at all. It's just good for a little bit of a top up. I think one of them actually has quite a bit in it, but the rest of them just has barely anything. So right now, my sanity's kind of in the toilet right now. You can see from how hazy like everything looks, and just how slow and sluggish my movements look. So yeah, my sanity is like on the cusp of ruining me, so I'm quite panicking right now, because I'm completely in the dark and I don't want to waste more of the oil in my lamp, but at the same time I'm just trying to shift the rocks out of the way, you know, click and drag them, and if you have to, hit the key or hit the button, whatever you're playing on, to give it a little bit of a push to move it out the way, give it a bit more of a shove. And so once you've got the way clear, then you can move on through. Now, I didn't want to keep wasting the oil in my lamp, but I really had to, just because my sanity was already going down, and if I wasn't fast enough, then I would have gotten killed. But luckily my sanity just went up a little bit more from that after finding a way out. So when you see all these barrels packed together, make sure you take a quick look around, just in case there's anything lying in between them. It's never usually there, but sometimes it is. But you'll find a couple of the different chemicals that you'll need to create a pot of acid that you need to break through. If you remember back in the lobby of the castle, like the first proper flashback sequence we have where the screen turns white and then it transitions into sort of these rose petals like guiding you along. It leads down some stairs, yeah, and there's that big sort of like the shadow wall in front of it blocking the way. By the way, you pick up this laudanum. I'm pretty sure if you left this laudanum alone and you didn't bother I'm pretty sure if you did that and you didn't bother picking it up, then that monster wouldn't have appeared down there. I don't know if you can get killed by it or not, but you just kind of sit in the corner, and you can turn the light on if you want to stop your sanity from dropping. You just, because it will never turn around, it'll stand there for a few seconds and then start moving on. But you really just want to be careful not to get too obsessed with panicking, or don't get too obsessed with the light. But you know, it's like I said before, I ended up with tons of oil later on around sort of the midsection of the game. I was just really worried because in the next chapter of the game there's going to be an area, so now we've got 3 components out of this wine cellar, and that's pretty much all it for the section of the area. Now we're going to go into the laboratory to find the last remaining pieces and put it all together, and then we can make the concoction we need. So yeah, I think it's forgot what the name of it is. I think it's the storage. In the next chapter of the game, there's one area that's infamously darker than all the others, and it's the storage. And while there's only a couple of potential monster encounters, or maybe there's like 3 of them, I think, it's one of the more terrifying sequences because it's so dark and you can barely see anything. Like even right now, like I can barely see shit on this preview window, but yeah, the more progress you make in certain areas, the more the shadow starts to overtake everything. So I'm just going to head on through to the laboratory, and I'm pretty sure I'm getting close to being killed, so I'll have to use a laudanum to heal myself up. Well, when you go through here, usually there's supposed to be like a tinderbox in that sort of like that hole in the wall over there with the torch. But the more you go over to it, the more there's like a roar that gets near it. If you get near it, it does one more roar. So just stay away from it because there isn't actually any tinderboxes or oil lined up against it like there usually is. Because if you're not playing on hard, you're playing on normal mode, just for reference. Way back in the day, I've beaten this game without using any tinderboxes, but still picking up as many as I could, and I swear I found like maybe 100 to 120 tinderboxes. So the fact that this game only gives you like 12 to 15 or maybe even 16 to work with across the entire game, it's a drastic downgrade. I think it's probably about the same oil, maybe a little bit more on normal than it is here, but yeah, you get plenty of oil here and there. So we've got the, was it a bucket or jar, whatever we need. I'm just trying my best to quickly make the chemistry pot. I'm just doing the best that I can to speed through it and make this as quickly as I can because my sanity isn't so good, and I don't remember this first chapter being all that difficult to keep your sanity up, but you know, clearly I was mistaken. By the way, in this area here, don't forget a tinderbox on that bookshelf, but don't look down at the grate in the middle of the room, because if you do and you look down at it, you'll see that there's a flooded corridor, and then you'll see these splashes, but there's nothing there. That's because it introduces you to the water monster that way, and the water monster is invisible. And it's invisible, and you can only see it and hear it by the way of how it splashes through the water, and it's extremely dangerous. And that's another section at the end of this chapter, because the first encounter you have with it properly at the end of this chapter is going to be what can potentially get you killed, because I almost got killed. To be fair, I did mess up, but that's mostly due to the awkward parkouring and jumping and trying to keep up above. And you'll see what I mean in a moment, but I just wanted to quickly make all this stuff and pick up the pot of acid so I can get my sanity back and getting the hell out. But through all that roaring and crashing, the stairs got destroyed. And this is supposed to be a tutorial to show you how to pick up some bigger items and stack it so that you can use it as a way to get out of certain situations or clear certain obstacles. But it doesn't really work out that way because it sets itself perfectly automatically instead of making you try to rotate it and figure it out yourself. So it's a bit of a weird thing right there. And I kind of regret not doing this commentary a little bit earlier today because it's been shockingly pretty quiet in the earlier hours of the afternoon, and by now I probably could have had it done, but you know, I'm doing it now and it sounds like the rest of the house is starting to get packed. So with all the work going on in the house right now, I fear I might have to cut the commentary early and just divide my video up into multiple parts depending on the different chapters there are. That might be for the best, because you know, you guys don't want to hear all the banging and crashing and vacuuming going on in the background while I'm trying to do some commentary and give you guys actual like guides on how to beat all this. So take the pot of acid, douse the shadow in it, and move on through to the refinery. And there'll be a bit of a flashback sequence through here as you wander through the tunnel. During these sequences, I'm pretty sure you don't have to waste your oil and light your lamp and all that in order to make it through. I don't think it'll drain your sanity, but when you come out of it, you'll have another brief look at a monster as it walks by. But unless you're sprinting full speed at it, it pretty much won't see you, so you're all good. Just don't look at it.
Yes, and there's a good reason for it.
And I need a drink, so I'll give you guys a bit of a moment.
What's the reason for the darkness, that is?
Stay close. Be careful not to stray.
What's the reason? Why is it so dark?
Pay attention, Daniel. It's important that you keep going straight and make sure not to stray.
Also, I apologise if you guys happen to hear any sort of whirring in the background. It's quite humid today, and my room's pretty isolated, and I'm just trying my best to keep cool and calm, so I got a little mini fan going. And do you just hate it when you've got all these different things going on at once? You've got all these chords and everything trips over each other, and you swear you move all the chords out the way of your chair, but then as you're rolling around your chair, even just a little bit, somehow your chords just magically end up underneath the rolling wheels. By the way, this area here in the refinery is a little bit tricky because it's not easy. It's not hard to make your way through it. It's just that if you go through the rooms in a certain order, if you interact with certain things in a certain way, it can actually lead to you experiencing more supernatural events, which is part of why, if you remember at the beginning of the game, there was a door that opened by itself right before you left the very first area. I purposely avoided going in that room, not only because there's nothing in there, but because if you enter that room straight away, what will end up happening is the lights will go out and the door will slam behind you, and that creates a supernatural event. And I'm trying to teach you guys, like, don't do any more than what you have to, because you're going to end up in a bad situation. You know, your sanity is going to drop more than if you happen to need just a little bit more sanity to get yourself through it, then it's all good. There's a little bit more technical stuff to do with managing your sanity and knowing what to do and how to be careful with it all. So that mistake there was mine. I got wounded by stepping onto part of the shadow, and I had absolutely no idea that it was there because it's so dark. So just watch where you step in this room here. And so even though I used my laudanum, I was still left with a few cuts and bruises, when if I didn't get hit by that, then I would have ended up with being a completely healthy person. Whereas at the end of this last section here, down in the cellar archives, leading to the end of the first chapter, this is where I almost get killed, and it definitely would have helped if I'd had more health. So yeah, to get through that area there, you just need to break the little bit of a wood stuck in the top of the winch, and then turn it around and get out of there as soon as you can. Now this area here is really tough. So as soon as you're down in the cellar archives and the room gets flooded, you need to take a right. You need to immediately run forward, take a right, get into this room, get up on this box here, and what you need to do is you need to look around without leaving your box, because as soon as you jump in the water, you're basically dead. Take a book and throw it into the corner, and as soon as he goes off to get it, you want to grab that handle and move it up, but you want to be quick. So try to jump on the boxes as much as you can, because the moment you hit the water is the moment that he gets alerted to your position. So I need to be quick because that gate's going to start closing after maybe like half a minute. So I'm just trying to jump up on these boxes and it's not fucking working. So I'm just jumping all around them trying to get through it. And I actually get hit right at the last moment as I get through it. So I was in the water for way too long. And as soon as you get into this next area here, you need to hang a left and get up on top of the boxes as much as you can. So if you'd notice, my screen has gone pretty much completely red, meaning one little hit from anything and I'm dead. And this is where things get really tricky, because you've got body parts and limbs hanging out on these boxes, and you need to use that as a distraction to get the monster away from you. But here's the thing. I don't remember this being a thing, but there's either two monsters in this room, so you need to throw multiple body parts. See, I went down there to try and crank it, but then I heard he's coming back, because you can hear the way that he roars a little bit louder, and that the music starts picking up again. So as soon as you throw, like, say, the torso or an arm or a leg, and you throw it as far as you can by gripping it and doing the push or the forcing away, as soon as it goes towards that limb and it grabs it and you can hear it going, and then it starts snacking on it, that's when you need to immediately get into the water and start cranking the handle, and just don't stop. And when you do, and it's up high enough that it matches your head, you can crouch underneath it and go. You don't have to crank it up all the way. You can crank it up like halfway or maybe 3/4 of the way up to your body and then crouch underneath it. But you've got to make sure that you get it right. And then as soon as you go through the door and into the last room, you need to immediately get on a box to your left, pick up the hollow needle, jump from box to box, use the hollow needle, and pick your way into the door. And then as soon as you pick your way into the door, you'll get some of your sanity back and into the archive tunnels. Now, I'm still only a fraction away from getting killed, so in this last part of the cellar archives, you need to basically just run through this entire sequence here. I believe you can just run through it as fast as you can and get to the end without any troubles, but just in case, make sure you open and close these doors. Most of the doors push doors, I believe. So you've got to keep making your way through these tunnels. Make sure you open and close the doors behind you. If you're not confident about your ability to do that on the fly, especially with mouse and keyboard, then just make sure that, you know, you at least close it somewhat of the way. Because as long as it's in the way, at the very least, yeah, because you hear the banging sound behind you, that means that the door's getting busted open and it goes down in one hit, so you really need to be quick. And so when you're in this first area here, and it leads you to like a T-junction, you need to take the right side and follow the right around, and then after that it's pretty much just a straight shot through all these halls, all these tunnels, get to the end of the door, and then boom, you're in the back hall now, and you've made it to the second chapter of the game. And I like this area a lot. In fact, pretty famously, it's the one piece of Amnesia music I like to listen to the most, and I still do after all these years. Because, you know, I think Back Hall quite literally is the name of the soundtrack. But, you know, once you got your sanity back and everything seems alright, you go to this really beautiful looking area. It's pretty haunting in its visuals, honestly, but just the music is so great. I'm almost tempted just to let you guys listen to it and not say anything, but I kind of have to give you guys pointers about what's happening. Okay, so in the back hall, you've got a chest underneath here that I don't believe has anything in it anymore, or it does. Yep, it's got oil and tinderbox. Nice. So now we're getting to the point, as you can see, where I've got plenty of oil, enough to fill up another whole lantern if I want, but yeah, there's nothing else really in this area to collect. If you take the left path of the fountain, you'll go into where you need to take an elevator to go down into the prison ward. But there's also a machine room there that helps operate the elevator, and you need to get it working. And off to the right path of the fountain, you've got the storage, which was what I was concerned about. And behind you, as you go in the back hall up the stairs, you've got the guest room, and I forgot what the name of the other place is. But the guest room is where Daniel was staying during his time in Brennenburg when him and Alexander were working together. There's a couple of bits and pieces you can loot around here. It's pretty simple, although I don't know if this is hard difficulty acting up or if this is just me not remembering anything, but a monster will appear in this room and you will be pursued if you're not careful enough or you're not fast enough. So somewhere in this room is a crowbar, and when you get the crowbar you need to use it to pry open one of the doors just off to the left of us, and as soon as you get in there, usually you have to wait until you find the key or until you pick up a note before the monster gets triggered and comes in through the guest room, where the music suddenly picks up and you hear the growl. But you've got a few seconds to act before he'll finally notice where you are. If you interact with the bed, it doesn't drop your sanity or anything, but it does trigger like a flashback sequence, so I don't really bother with that because I don't want to move around real slowly. So the crowbar's on the desk here inside the bedroom of the guest room. So you'll want to use it on this door and break your way in. Now as soon as you do that, go inside, close the door behind you, and then get inside one of the wardrobes, close the door behind you, and just hide in there and wait for him to go away until you can't hear him anymore. Because the best thing about the guest room is that it's so small of an area that you don't have to actually worry. So I panicked, didn't close that main door, which I should have. But the thing is, if I did close that door, then the monster would have heard it and it would have come and bashed it down anyway. But at least now, all I have to do is just sit in here and he won't be able to find me. As long as I don't make any noise, as long as I just sit still, then I'll be alright. And I don't need to worry about my sanity dropping because I'm not going to be in the dark for very long. And I'm pretty sure he actually is still in the room. Like, again, I can't tell because I've turned off the volume for the video editor so I can speak to you guys and not have it do it like a double feedback loop. And so I just pick up whatever I can in here. And so with the monster gone, the monster will go as soon as you hear like that sound that gets made whenever you go and go through different areas and all that. When you go to different areas, like that heavy like door closing sound. So as soon as that sound gets made, then you'll know that he's gone, and so you can go back out no problem. So what all of these areas contain is the guest room contains the key that allows you to access the machine room, which I believe I go to foolishly first, but I don't actually do anything in there because, well, I don't really need to, because I don't have all the tools. Actually, no, that's not true. I go to the study first. And the study, I believe, contains one of 3 rods that I need in order to activate a I think they're machine rods. I need one of them from out of the study at the very end of it. And there are no monster encounters here, but there is a little bit of a parkour sequence which can get you killed if you're not careful, so just make sure you're careful with your movements. You know, you'll have to get like a sprint jump going, but it's not too bad. And plus you're pretty close to the beginning of the chapter anyway, so it's not really a big deal. And if you're worried about it, or you get killed and you start at the beginning of the chapter, you don't have to worry so much, because you can always just come to this room first if you want to. But yeah, the other 2 out of 3 rods that you'll want to find are located at the very end of the storage room, and the storage is quite dangerous because there's a couple of supernatural events that happen, and not only that, but there's quite a few monster encounters in that area, and it can be really dangerous if you're not careful. So this is a pretty twisted room, so I apologise if anyone's a bit queasy when it comes to animal cruelty, but this is basically a flashback implying that Alexander was experimenting on dogs to figure out methods for torture so that he could extract something within people's or victims' blood to use as like a sacrifice for a ritual in order to get him back to his old home, his other dimension. So yeah, it's pretty gnarly, but it is what it is. By the way, this is the desk I accidentally open up on, where it's got skulls that fall out, and that was a big mistake, because I thought it was the other one, but it turns out it was this one, so yeah, not good. By the way, that little roar that happened before and that cracked the glass, just bring any sort of object you can find, smash the glass open. Now, if you want to, just wait for the roars in the forest to subside, if the screen's shaking or anything that happens distracts you or whatever. So in through here you'll find the first rod that you need, and the other 2 will be down in the storage, which will be, I'll actually go to the machine room and unlock it first, but as I go in there I realised, oh yeah, that's right, the other pieces of what I need to complete this puzzle are down in the storage. You know, hooray. And I suppose right now, while things are pretty quiet, I should probably talk a bit more about where the rest of the puzzles in the story goes and the different areas you've got to go to. So this is chapter 2 right now. Chapter 3 is going to be, in my opinion, one of the ones that might trip people the most up, because it's extremely dark. You can go through a lot of oil very quickly if you're not careful. By the way, I was just checking here to make sure that I'm like, okay, I'm getting kind of worried, maybe I should start saving. I didn't realise at the time that you could save automatically from the beginning of a chapter, but all other autosaves are disabled. And at the same time, I just wanted to double check if you had to save manually from the main menu. And yeah, it costs 4 tinderboxes. So I did quite well for myself as far as tinderboxes go, but yeah. In the prison area in chapter 3, it's one of my favourite sequences in the game, honestly, but it's not as bad to navigate as I originally thought it was. It's just a matter of sticking to the far outsides and taking care of all the rooms at the very end of the outside perimeter paths, and realising that all the middle sections don't really have anything and they all just kind of connect to one another. So if you can get a mental map going, or you can make a map of all the different directions you go to as you go, or just simply follow what I'm doing, which I do get lost a couple of times, but it doesn't consume that much time. But chapter 3 is really intense. You get quite a few monster encounters, a couple of really intense chases, a couple of instances where I probably should have gotten killed or been put on the right path to it all. And chapter 4 is going to be all about the Cisterns, which it's one of the easier chapters in the game because there's only one encounter where you're in danger, whether it's from the loss of sanity or from getting attacked. But it's not that bad if you're careful. And chapter 5 is going to be down in the sewers. That was a lot more difficult to me than I remember it being, but the sewer section is, it was either me being too reckless and pushing up and getting a bit too cocky and ahead of myself, but yeah, I had a couple of complications down in the sewers, but nothing that was really a problem, because if I did take damage I would have gotten killed, because you're dealing with a brute down there, and when it comes to the brute, he will one-shot you no matter what. So there was a couple of close calls I had made, but I managed to get through it. And chapter 6 is one of the longer ones. I don't know exactly how far it extends, but chapter 6 is when you've got to start looking for all the orb pieces, and it's where you've also got to go into all these different torture rooms, and if you accidentally interact with the torture devices, or if you look closely, or you click on them to see the exact description of how the torture gets conducted, the more you're in that room, the more Daniel's sanity drains. And this was another instance in Chapter 2 right here where I made a big mistake, because I went into that machine room. There were a couple of supernatural instances which lowered my sanity, but at the same time my sanity already wasn't at the peak when it should have been. You know, the moment my sanity cleared up and I was crystal clear, I should have immediately gone down into the storage and just gotten over and done with, but no. So you can see in here it's extremely dark, and it's going to be like that even worse going forward. So down in this little area here, there's going to be 3 different paths. The left path into a room is where you're going to pick up an object in order to make a drill part, where you can drill into these barrels down here on the right path, where you need to pick up, I believe it's some sort of, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's something to do with creating an explosive. And the path straight forward is where you need to go to in order to get down some stairs and then blow up a series of rocks in your way, you know, debris in your way, and so you can move on forward to the next area. So there actually isn't that many places to go in the storage, and it's actually pretty tightly packed. It's just that some of the areas are quite wide in space, and they're quite dark as well, so it can be a little tricky to see sometimes. So for the most part, picking up the drill parts doesn't trigger any of the monsters to come out, but there's going to be one that gets triggered when you go down the stairs and you hang a left and go through that door. Yeah, you'll find one of the drill parts in there, and that's when the monster gets triggered. So if you want to, just make sure you keep the door closed before you pick up that part, and you can sit in the corner with your lamp going if you want, just to kind of keep your sanity up. But I also found that by the end of the game, I had more than enough to where I made a save where I didn't need to make it. So, you know, if you want to just get it all done in one go, and the puzzles were your main concern about knowing where to go and what to do at certain times, and the monsters aren't really the problem, especially since you can easily exploit certain monster encounters where I only do this like twice, maybe out of this entire playthrough, but apart from a couple of areas which this can't work on, if you have a monster encounter where it just suddenly pops up in the middle of an area and it wanders around and it won't go away until you've gone past it, or until you've picked up what you need to and gone back out again, then you can always just go back out through the way you came into a different area, and then you get the loading screen, and then you go back into that same area and the monster's usually gone, and you can trick it into getting taken away. And because this is all done by permadeath, if you don't die, then that monster isn't going to come back. So surprisingly, as long as you know what you're doing, a lot of the monster encounters aren't really that dangerous or that tricky. And I don't know if you guys can hear this, but I apologise if you hear sort of noises in the background. As you know, everyone else here is, they're awake and they're moving about, and we've got a young'un here, so it's going to be a little bit of a background noise. But I mean, I'm 40 minutes deep into this commentary. The whole footage is like 2.5 hours long. I figured I might as well just try and breeze through it, or at least breeze through it enough to get to the end of this chapter, so that I can just take a break and come back to it a bit later on maybe. But yeah, for the most part, just pop your lantern on and on. Don't get too greedy with it, even down here. So once you've found all the drill parts and you've got the chemistry pot still, then you've got to make sure you drill into these 3 barrels, and when it causes a leak, you've got to put the chemistry pot down, and then you can get all the components that you need together to create the explosive. You just take the explosive down to the stairs in front of the rock debris, and then you just pick up like a rock or something, throw it at the explosive, and then it'll start triggering and going off, and so you have to run back and make sure you're not too close to it, and then set it off and you'll be alright. And then when you go on through to the next area, it's a little bit tricky because it's still dark, but there's no imminent danger. But then you get to this one area where there's like this sort of rectangle like bench right in the middle of the room with these pillars standing up in the middle of them, and then you've got all these boxes and barrels laying about on 2 different sides of it. But there's 2 rooms. One is already open, and that one's okay to go into. And I think there's a tinderbox in there maybe. But there's another door a little bit further up, and that one's closed. You want to stay away from that one as much as possible. because if you try to open that door, you can unlock it, but there's a monster in there just sitting in the dark, and the moment you open it up, it'll come out, and it'll start to attack you and bust its way through the door. Like, you can usually get it trapped back in there pretty easily, but it knows where you are now, and it'll chase after you, unless you get as far away from it as you can. But when you just ignore it, whether you ignore it or you release it, if you carry on through the main path that it's setting you on, what will happen is you'll find the 2 fuel rods, and as soon as you pick them up, there'll be a growl, and the monster will be outside that room, so you've got to make sure you get the door closed before you get the last cycle rods. And when you get those cycle rods and you hear the monster gradually, you hear the growling get softer and softer, that means he's moving away. So you've really got to pay attention to the noise of what's going on here. So it'll sound quite loud at first, but then it gets softer and softer and you hear it less and less. That's how you know it's wandering away, so you need to follow it behind it, and it'll wander from one side of the room to the other, but only in one lane. So you want to go on the outside of it and just hug the wall as much as you can to keep away from it, to also get enough cover, and you're usually alright. And then as soon as you wait for it to go to the other side of the room, you can pretty much sprint on through, right back to the main area that you entered the storage in, but there'll be another monster encounter. But if you just patiently wait where you are, it'll usually go away after maybe like a minute or so. So this section here is more nerves than anything else, but all in all, it's not that hard of a section. Like I know I said before, it was a tough section, but that's mostly if you don't know what you're doing, or you're panicking, or you make the wrong move. But yeah, just the storage room in this area here, just don't open it up, just leave it alone. Because if you leave it alone, the monster that comes and eventually stalks these halls right here is going to be the one that comes out of that room. Since you can't actually kill any of these monsters, you know, it's good continuity whether or not you release it or it releases itself. So I'm backing up as I'm moving to try and avoid the supernatural encounter here lowering my sanity, but it doesn't actually do anything to help because the camera forces you to look at it. And right now my sanity is starting to take a little bit of a hit, but I'm still good for now. So on these shelves are going to be the cycle rods and a note. Now if you really have to, come back behind there and just hide. So if he starts hammering on the door, then go back around the side and hide behind those boxes. Otherwise, if he's not breaking through the door, you know, make sure you close the door before you pick it all up, because that's what triggers the monster. You can get away with it by just sort of crouching here in front of the candles so you can keep your sanity at a good level. You don't have to worry about slowly losing it by being in the dark or turning your lamp on and wasting it. So you just hang out here, wait for the noise to get softer and softer. It's more nerves than anything else. He doesn't hang around for long in this area here. But you'll usually find that my key strategy of waiting for a monster to leave an area once it shows up is about 20 to 30 seconds. I just wait that long and I move on. So this is a little bit tricky here because you can't just wait for him to leave. He'll wander back and forth. So this is where this is probably the first second most hairy encounter I've ever had besides the water monster from before. I go up to the corner here just making sure to keep my sanity, but I'm waiting here, and even though I'm clearly in the light, I'm right in the corner, so I'm just missing his peripherals. He's going to walk right by me, and I'm going to look away immediately. Oh, see that? Yeah. So you can still creep behind him, even though he's this close. But if you're standing up, he'll hear you. The hearing of these monsters is usually pretty bad. It's only if you're like bumping into things or if you're in water that it's a problem. But as soon as he wanders back through there, I can usually start sprinting pretty early on, because even if he manages to hear me, he'll turn around, but he won't really be able to see me from that distance. But even if he does, even though the monster is technically a little bit faster than you, you're still fast enough that you can turn around the corners and avoid it. By the way, you go up those stairs and try to get back out that way again, there'll be a monster that spawns in, and you've got a few seconds to wander back before it starts getting in the path and it can see you. So just keep to this corner, and as long as you're at least here, it won't wander around. Just wait like 20 to 30 seconds, and as soon as you do, go back up the stairs. And I don't think it'll wander back down this area of the hall again. It'll only stay in the middle section. But if you hang back here for about a minute, he completely disappears and just doesn't appear again. And even if you don't trust it, or you feel like he might still be around, just lightly turn your lamp on and off and just move up slowly and try to make sure you peek him. I know there's a button you can push where you can lean out of cover, but I forgot what it is on console and controller and all that, so I don't really bother. I'm worried that he might be in here, but apparently he isn't. But if he is, and you're worried about not seeing him, just make sure you stick to these lights and follow the path and then sprint up. Because as soon as you get to like the middle section, and you just pass that little sort of rectangular like part in the middle of the room, as soon as you get up to one of those and you get a clear shot to the stairs, you can, unless he's right in front of you, you can pretty much sprint the rest of the way and up the stairs and he'll never be able to catch you. So that's it. That's the storage done. That's probably the hardest part of this chapter finished and over and done with. You know, if you're not counting puzzle solving. So yeah, in chapter 1 the hardest part was dealing with the water monster, chapter 2 it's dealing with the storage, and chapter 3 it's going to be pretty much all of the prison section because it's really intense, but I would argue that the very first part of the prison section is going to be pretty tricky, and because again I didn't realise that you could get a save at the beginning of a chapter after you've been killed. I accidentally made a manual save by spending 4 of my tinderboxes so that I could make a manual save at the beginning of the prison section when that was already going to give me a save. So I felt kind of silly after I realised that. And I thought about stopping the game and just quickly looking online to see if that was true or not, about whether or not it really is like permadeath, because it says like it disables autosaves, so I would assume that, yeah, you can get killed, but it'll set you back up at the last checkpoint. It's just that you're not allowed to save manually. If you leave the game and you come back to it, if you haven't saved, then you lose everything. That's what I assumed it was, but no, as it turns out, it is permadeath, but you get like it's a permadeath per chapter rather than a permadeath for the whole game, although I'm treating it coincidentally like it's a permadeath for the whole game. And 2.5 hours passes by like nothing, man, with this game, because like it felt like I was playing for so many hours, but I was just playing for 2.5. Like I knew exactly what I was doing and everything, but still, it's really tricky. So down in the machine room, once you've placed all the rods in there, you've got to look out for 3 different gear pieces like this, and you've got to go down to the bottom room and you've got to stick them onto the machine, and there's going to be another little there's going to be a furnace that you have to open up, and you have to drop 3 coal rocks onto the inside of the burner, and then you've got to turn the burner on. And then once you've got all the rods in place and you've got the gears in place and you've got the coal in the burner, and you go back up to the very top room on the top floor and you adjust the different levers to create different I'm not sure what the terminology for this is because I'm no engineer, know nothing like that, but once they're both lined up with 8 up and 8 down, they've got different numbers and different figures. It's another one of those sort of puzzles that you have to solve where you've got to make sure the numbers line up correctly in both sides. It's not so bad and I get through it pretty easily, but I can show you guys the solution of what it is so you can easily get through it, so you can do this even faster than I did. Because just remember that I do remember most of these puzzles, but there's a couple of bits and pieces and I forgot where exactly they're located, and I forgot some of the easiest way to deal with these things, and I'm quite worried because my sanity isn't looking the best, and even though I've got plenty of oil in the lamp, I just don't like wasting it down here because I know that the prison's going to be very, very dark and I'm going to need a lot of light source for there. So while I'm just doing all the puzzle solving here, this is all pretty standard stuff, and right before I get to pulling all the different levers and getting the right levels adjusted, as far as the future of the other chapters go, I'd say the one thing that might trip you guys up more than anything else, besides the prison coming up or trying to deal with the brute down in the sewers, is probably chapter 6, where, you know, all the different torture rooms and the transept and the choir. Now the choir is quite an interesting area because famously that was always the one area I had so much trouble with back when I was younger, and the area that always creeped me out the most, because essentially it's like, I don't even know what it is exactly, but it's a very odd part of the castle. It doesn't look like it belongs really, because it's got like all these waterways that run through it, but it's all like blocked out by this thick fog and like purpley pinkish mist, and you can't see anything for a long time. But there's a brute that wanders around in the middle of it all, and it can see just fine, but you can't see very well at all. And there's 2 different bridges that lead off to the right side or just right ahead, and they both pretty much line up at the same area anyway, so it's not a big deal. But there's a couple of tricky spots you can use to exploit it and get around pretty easily, and I got through the choir in this playthrough pretty easily. so I can show you guys how to do it pretty well. But yeah, the choir is really dangerous. Like, if you get caught out in the middle of the choir and the brute sees you and your only choice is to run to the nearest door, it probably won't be the exit door because you're in too deep. You'll have to go back into one of the torture rooms. If you can get in behind that and close the door behind you, even if they bust it down, the hallways are so long that you can usually get around him and you can get away from him before he can even get to you. So you're all right in that department, but you're still ending up in a torture room, and when you do end up in a torture room, you're gonna slowly lose your sanity. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there. So I don't know if you can see this very well, the solutions, but yeah, I can't see shit at all. I just see the hand symbol that pops up. I can barely see any solutions at all. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I do apologize if you guys can't see shit, because I can't see shit either. So if you want to crank up the brightness on your game as you do it, then absolutely, by all means, do it. So I've got the flow nice and stable. Am I going to turn the lamp on to show you guys? No, I'm not, because I'm a fucking dick. Oh my god, that's so bad. If I'm not mistaken, even though I couldn't see what was going on from this awful footage right here, or at least from my end, the preview screen's pretty awful. I believe you have to move the two on the left down, and the one on the two on the left down, and the one on the far right down, but then the others have to go up. So the third and fourth one have to go up, but the first, second, and fifth one have to go down. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I could be wrong though. But it's not that hard of a puzzle to figure out. You just have to take the numbers on the up and down and make sure they match up, 8 at the top and 8 down the bottom. You'll figure it out pretty easily. Because you'll notice that a couple of those levers have number 2 on the bottom as well, so you can use that for either or. Plus, even if you break down the different combinations, you know, you've got 5 levers. You know, you got like 15 to 20 different combinations. It's not even that. Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You got like 13 different combinations. You can figure it out, no problem. So I've got quite a bit of oil saved up and a full lamp. That's really good. And chapter 3 is coming up. Just move on through, get into the elevator, close it up, move on down to the prison section. And my throat's getting pretty dry, but we're coming up close to the halfway point of the video. I figure we might as well just finish it. There's quite a bit of noise going on outside my room. I don't know if it's getting picked up on the mic that well, but if it happens to by chance, then you know, it's unfortunate, but sure. I kind of want to get this video over and done with, and I don't know if it'll get put out today or even tomorrow, but I want to do my best, because I've got a couple of other videos lined up that I want to take care of before I have my little holiday. So the shadow's taken over on the outside of the elevator, and we're going to crash down to the bottom. And in the prison section, you're going to have quite a few monster encounters early on, and this is where noise for me on the commentary end is definitely going to help out. But you know, if I want cleaner commentary, I can't have the audio double looping unless I magically turn the audio up while I'm doing my commentary. But I don't want to accidentally pause the video if it happens to do it. So while this plays out and the next session gets loaded up, I'm going to take a quick drink. See, my sanity isn't the best, but you know, because my sanity does get quite low like a few different times in this chapter here, and so I go ahead and do a manual save, and I've got one more left to go if I want it, but it wasn't necessary because this is a new chapter. So if you get down to here and you haven't saved manually yet, don't worry about it. Just keep on going. If you get killed, it is what it is.
One of my responsibilities as a bailiff is that of a prison warden. This is where criminals are locked up. Like a dungeon? Very much so. Come, don't linger.
So yeah, prison's very dark. As soon as you go in through here, you'll have a bunch of prisoners, or at least like a sound of prisoners banging on their doors, and so that causes a further drop in sanity. So I think my sanity drops down quite low. You can see here that my footage is a little bit blurry. a little bit shaky, that means I'm pretty close to being killed. Now, you can wander around the bottom of the prison section pretty easily without triggering any monsters to come and charge you down, but when you're wandering around this bottom floor here, when you first enter the prison, if you see a bunch of stairs, make sure you go up them last, because that actually triggers a monster encounter. When you got the stairs to the right there, that'll trigger a monster encounter, so just keep on going through here. I believe I do also trigger a monster encounter down this hallway. Like, I try to go forward. So I'm just going to wander through these rooms, make sure I don't miss anything. A lot of these rooms don't have anything in them, but the odd one has the tool that you need. So I tried to go through here, or at least go far enough, and it causes a big crash. And so my sanity is starting to drop really dangerously. And just in case it triggers like a monster to attack, I wanted to, you know, stay crouched, keep the light on. Because, you know, if I look at a monster for too long now, or if I encounter another supernatural event, it's basically game over for me. So I found the hammer in this room here, and you're going to need to combine the hammer with a chisel so that you can break a lock off, and so then you can also break a hole in the ground that former prisoners used to escape. And yeah, I'll just leave you with the puzzle there. Yeah. So just wander on through here, keep the light on, make sure you don't run out of sanity. Bit of an interruption going here. People need something, they always need something. It's just kind of the territory you're dealing with when you're with other people. So you go up these stairs, and I'm very nervous here because you hit these stairs, you go up it like halfway, and there'll be a monster that spawns in directly at the top to the right. And I'm going to be running back, because if you try to walk back normally, it doesn't work. Okay, well I thought it would have triggered. Oh, there we go. And I believe it's also giving chase, so I'm just running. And I gotta take one of the rooms that have doors on it, and I'm gonna shut the door. And I'm gonna take the light out, and I'm just gonna crouch in the corner. I believe you can still keep the light on, but if you hear it nearby, you can still keep the light on, because it's not really affected by the light until it's like there's nothing in its way. But if you hear like a banging and crashing of it trying to get through the door, then that's when you need to turn the light off. You need to turn the light off and just like cower in the corner. So I'm very nervous because my sanity's on the cusp of giving out, and if I do, that's game over for me. So yeah, once again, the idea of me doing this and doing a no deaths run, it's not on purpose, it was by accident. I just happened to do it all in one go and not get killed and not run out of sanity, which leads to death. So I happened to do it just right. And by all accounts, I didn't even need to manually save, but I still did. It doesn't really take away, it's me not wanting to do certain annoying and difficult sequences again. But now that he's gone and I can move on through the prison area here, I forgot what cell area this is called. I think it's the second one. But we need to carry on through here. I think there'll be one more monster encounter in this part here. We're just going to go through these rooms, search around for the chisel. And once we search around for the chisel, then we need to break into that one room that has a lock on it that's quite weak and in poor condition. And then we need to break through a hole in the ground so that we can access the next area of the prison, where we can begin making or at least find the necessary materials to get a jar of acid that we can use to pour on the lock, and then break it off with the hammer and chisel. And once we do that, we need to open up the door and move on through to the cisterns, which is another way to describe like drainage or sewers. So I don't want to take the chance that a monster will pop out while I'm in the middle of something, while there's flashbacks going on, because there's quite a few of them that pop up in this area here, which makes it rather annoying, but I just want to stay in the light, help get my sanity back. So yeah, that's the lock you need to go back to. So I'm going to combine the hammer and chisel together. So if anything, the area that I went to first in this area is a good one, because that means you can get the hammer without having to go back and forth between the places. Just fill up a few more drops of oil into your lantern. Keep this door open in case you need to run back into it, and use it as a place to just hunker down and go into hiding. So I just heard something, and I'm trying to grab the door, but it won't grab the door. awkward controller controls. So I shut the door there, and I think I tried, it's really dark and I can't really see it, but I think I tried my best to move the bed in front of the door. Oh, see, it's breaking through now. So the best thing you can do is to keep your light off. Even if your sanity's at risk, you really need to just keep the light off, otherwise he'll see you. Just turn around and just stay in the corner. If you look around into the corner and stay completely still, there's a good chance he won't see you, even if he wanders in. But if you don't make any noise and you've given him no reason to be alerted, or whether it's through the light of your lantern or moving around, if you just stay completely still and look in the corner, he won't wander in the room, he'll just stay on the outside and look in and notice nothing's in there. So you'll usually be alright. And then as soon as you hear him wander away, just start wandering back out. Hang a left. And the cell at the end of the hall here. Now my sanity's getting pretty low, so I just want to quickly get this over and done with by dragging the bed out of the way. And then clearing a path to the northern block of the prison by using the hammer and chisel to create a hole in the floor. I just wanted to double check down the hall that the monster came from to make sure I wasn't missing anything. You know, like an item or a tinderbox or something, before I go down to the hole. So now that you've cleared the way to the hole and you found everything else, there will be no more monster encounters for this area here. And all this does is lead down to a different gate, which is blocked off, that's in the northern prison block. And so, yeah, so there is some laudanum at the end of here. So if you're wounded, then that's a good place to get laudanum. Just something to keep in mind. So my sanity's all back, my health is in good check, I've got, you know, a bit of health if I need it, I've got plenty of oil, I'm feeling pretty good about myself, but I still think that first section of the prison is probably the most difficult part of this chapter, and this part here is a lot longer, but it's not quite as bad, because all the encounters are pretty brief and there's lots of places you can hide and go to. If you do happen to run into a monster by chance and you're not quite sure what's going on or where you're going to hide, make sure you make a mental note of where everything is, or at least the best that you can, and if you can, leave all the doors of the rooms you've already explored if they were closed. Make sure you open them up and leave them open, so that way you can run into them and close them behind you. Or if you really have to take those extra steps, if you find any boxes or barrels lying around, make sure you pick them up and rotate them around to create like a barricade or a wall, but not against the door, otherwise it'll go flying all over the place, but set yourself up with something where you can hide behind some barrels and it won't be able to see you. I'm going to be doing that in a couple of different sections throughout the game because I'm very nervous, or because I just like doing it, but it's really unnecessary. So as soon as you come out of that little hole in the ground and you go through the wall, to the right is where you want to go to first, and at the very end of the hall, a bit further around the hole, it's you can't really go anywhere from there. It's basically alluding to the idea of that's where you used to be and this is where you are now. So I'm just moving that roll of carpet around to let me know where things are, because I remember this being a very difficult place to get lost in and navigate around, but it's not that bad, honestly. So you want to hang a right, go all the way up to the end of the hall and these stairs, pick up whatever you can in this room, and there's going to be a vat of acid, and you need this acid to help burn through, corrode, and weaken one of the locks in this area of the prison that you need to bust through with the hammer and chisel after it's been weakened. So you need a jar to be able to touch that. Don't touch the acid, by the way. It's the hand symbols out there. Don't touch it, because if you do, you'll get wounded. So you just leave it as it is, but you definitely need to come back with a jar, which you'll be able to find in the glass jars in the storage room, I believe, or at least a storage room in the different part of the prison. And it's really tough to see in this preview window because there's a lot of different hallways and it's really dark all the time, but my best bet is just to remember that hole you came out of, and when you bust through the wall, to the right is where the acid's going to be, but to the left is the main path that you need to follow in order to get everywhere. And as you follow the path leftways, see, there was a monster right at the end of the hallway, and so I'm just hiding back here and staying in the light as best I can, and I'm waiting for him, but he doesn't actually proceed upwards, he's only hanging out down in the hallway. When you come back for the acid and you do get it in the glass jar, there will be a monster that pops up as soon as you go out the door, and so you have to close it behind you and he will bust through it. and so you've got to hide in the corner behind the pig carcasses hanging up, or you just need to hide opposite in a different corner. You basically need to hang out in the back of the room. But let's now focus on the real tough part, and it's navigating this area of the prison. You need to hang a left past the hole that you came out of, go up the stairs, and basically just do your best to stick to the far left. Just stick to the left, hang a left, and just keep going all the way around the prison, because you'll usually find that the different areas of the prison they always end at certain passages. When you're going left, you always run to a dead end, and you go back and you go left further again up the halls, and you'll run to another dead end until you eventually find where everything is. But keep in mind that the more of these encounters you go through and the more that you deal with, the easier it's going to be for you to navigate without having to worry about monsters, because you won't have to worry about monsters up to a certain point. So if you keep triggering these encounters and you survive them and you hide from them and you wait them out, then sure, you'll be going through quite a bit of oil to see where you're going with your lamp, but you'll still at the very least be able to get through pretty simply. So try to go for the doors that are already open and leave the doors that are closed until the moment you know it's all clear, or until you hear a monster, and then immediately shut the door. Because you want to keep those rooms that have light sources available on candles, you want to keep those ones open for you to go into, because you might think that you may get spotted by the monsters if the light's on, but you've got to remember, even if it follows you into the room and it detects you, unless you're really right close to it and you go into that room, as long as you turn the light out and you just go into the corner and look away from it, it won't go into the room and to try and look for you. And you'll know that by way of the noise that it makes when it's chasing you disappear, when it starts fading out. That's when you know it's still looking for you and it's following your trail, but it won't go into the room. And I'm doing my best to loot that area without going to that dead body and looking at it for long enough, because if you look at dead bodies or body parts for long enough, your sanity will start to drop as well. So you just got to be really careful. Again, most of the challenge in this is just making sure you pick the right order to do your puzzles and make sure you get through it nice and quickly, because if you don't, then your sanity will drop quite a bit and you may not have enough left before you inevitably give out and die. So yeah, whenever these flashback sequences happen, you're usually pretty safe, but make sure you just hang out near a candle that you can, a light source, so you can get your sanity in check, and you got somewhere nice and cozy to hang out at. I need some water, goddamn. By the way, when you hear Alexander say that, is he safe? Well, it's for his own good. Then it's a warning that there's going to be another encounter with a monster. Like if you wandered to certain sections, whenever he says stuff like that, it will trigger a monster going off. And I believe this is where I get a little bit lost and I go around in circles. So I'm like, oh, the kitchen. But it's like, I think I'm quietly wandering back to where I've already gone before. Because I get to some stairs and I'm like, oh, this is the way down to that storage area. But it's like, no, it leads me back to the starting area. So I'm like, oh, god damn it. So yeah, now the left side's pretty much all covered, and most of the front's all covered apart from one hallway. So I'm just going to stick to the right side only. And so this is what I'm doing. Until I hear some monsters coming, I'm just sprinting my way through and turning the lamp on and off. Okay, now when Alexander says he escaped, where is he now? There's going to be a hallway with two different rooms that are closed, and one of those rooms actually has a monster inside of it, so you don't want to open that up. You can tell what room that is, because one of the rooms is lit by a candle and the other room is a little bit darker with a tinge of blue from a light. And you don't want to look into the cell in case it triggers the monster, but yeah, at the end of the hallway here, it'll be another door you can't open and a locked gate. When you go around here, the monster does appear and it'll go to the end of this hallway, but it won't come around the corner as long as you haven't made too much noise and it doesn't know where you are, and you keep your light off, you're pretty much good to just stay here until it wanders back, and you can wander around the corner when you hear it drifting away, and you can follow it back down, and eventually it'll disappear. So I'm worried about my sanity running out, so I'm just going ahead and making sure I'm alright. And I'm sorry if you can hear this, but it's so hot in this room, goddamn. So it's got like a little fan going. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's nice to have some fresh air on my face. I've got it down by my feet and aiming it straight up, hoping that it catches me on the updraft, but yeah, it's not really doing all that much. Plus me talking like this and just laying back and constantly just talking about what's going on, and it really kind of wears me out a little bit, because I usually don't talk all this much, like for anything ever, so that's why it's not so natural to me. So I'm just going to try and navigate back through these rooms and try to figure out where to go next. And I literally can't see shit on my preview screen. The screen's going a little bit wobbly, meaning my sanity is starting to drop. So I need to start making some progress and solving some mysteries soon, otherwise I'm fucked. So the area I'm warning you about is where all those rocks are packed into the wall, and there's a chair right outside of these two rooms. This room here is safe to go into, but the other room, you know, you want to avoid, because it's got a monster in there. That monster will wander out anyway when you come back down this way after picking up the glass jar, but if you open it up now, it'll get loose. Like, I'm tempted to open it, but I remember, like, nah, that's the monster in there, I don't want to do it. Like, because I think there's something in there as well. I think I go to check back later after the monster's already gone, and I find there's nothing actually in there, but I could be wrong. So you just go past those cells, and you've got a couple of different directions you can go. You've got the storage on the right, which I believe is where you're supposed to go, and the path on the left leads you to another one of those locked gates that shows you where you used to come from. So yeah, you need to go down to the storage area, and through this door, it's going to be a bunch of items, including the glass jar that you need. Some oil, a tinderbox, very good stuff. And so this is where things get a little bit silly. So there is going to be a monster that shows up outside in the halls when I go back outside, but I'm just going through the process of setting up all these barrels and all these different things and trying to remember how to rotate and awkwardly doing it. So I apologize for this part here. It's just a bit of a goofy moment of me trying to make like some sort of barricade in case it gets in and starts looking around for me. Then hopefully it'll bugger off and wander away when it realizes it can't see me. So instead of rotating like a normal person, I'm just trying to stack it, let it fall over a little bit, and then pick it up immediately. You know, using that as a way to correct itself instead of doing it properly with a mouse and keyboard. Because there is going to be a section, actually, in the Cisterns area, where you've got to go through and change the order of some pipes to get it to correctly, like, make the water drain out. And I was trying to get it to rotate in a different way because it can go off a few different combinations, and I couldn't get it to work on controller, so I switched to mouse and keyboard and got it fixed up immediately. So yeah, we're pretty much coming up to the end of this chapter. We just got to go back all the way through to the very beginning area, and we go up to the kitchen, we go to the vat of acid, we put the glass jar in it. I don't know how we managed to put the acid in the jar without damaging the outside or getting our hands burnt by doing that, but somehow we do it. And when we do, we've got to run all the way back through, down to one of these hallways, pour it on the lock, and then we've got to hammer it off, and then we open it up and run on through to the Cisterns. And the Cisterns is a pretty relaxing chapter. But looking at the time now, we've just got another hour and a bit to go. So besides what we're dealing with right now, the Cisterns is pretty easy. In the sewers, there's a couple of tough sequences that are either happening by chance or it's more intimidating than anything else. I'd say it's more intimidation than anything else. And most of Chapter 6 is pretty easy. I foolishly tried to go on ahead and push on ahead to try and look for certain items in case there was other tinderboxes in an area you don't technically have to go to get progress through the story. But what it did actually end up doing was I managed to completely erase a monster that patrols around near the end of the game, because we had to go back through a particular area. It's the area right outside the inner sanctum. I forgot what it's called, but it's like this massive like four-way bridge leading to the center tower, or center like sort of I don't know what you call them, but there's like a tower out of the middle of this mist, and it's got like a little bit of shelter, and it's got like the shadows kind of jelly stuff all over it, and there's a brute that wanders around there, and if you don't go through it the first time, or if you leave it there, then what'll end up happening is it'll stay there for that last encounter right before the end of the game. But I actually went back through the door, and then I went back into the area again, and it despawned him. But because I didn't get killed throughout the entire game, he remained despawned, and so I can get through the last part of that area no problem. So you can see I'm wandering back here. I need to follow the path to the kitchen area, go around these halls, go down the stairs, go back to the front of where all those rocks were pushed out of the way for the tunnel that we went through, go back up to the kitchen, get our acid, and we're going to wander back through. But because the padlock we need to break is on the right side of the prison cell area, we need to stick to the right side when we go back. So I want to get a little bit more oil in my lantern, that's all good. And the cisterns are pretty well lit anyway, so you don't have to worry about wasting tons of oil anyway. So I'm coming back through here, and as soon as you start wandering back through here to try and get the acid, then the monster's going to spawn in behind you, so you need to run immediately for the room, and he'll start breaking through. You can probably hear him by now breaking through already. If you just hang back here in one of these two areas, whether it's behind the pigs or on the other side of where I am, and you just stay in the dark, you crouch down, you look in the corner. In fact, you can probably turn on the light and you'll be alright. But you're so close to getting a couple of different puzzles solved, whether it's the acid in the jar or breaking the lock, you'll be alright. Because as soon as you get the acid on the lock and you break it with the hammer, you need to immediately open it and run through, because if you don't, there's one of the monsters that spawns behind you, and so you need to immediately like open the door and close it behind you and then run on through. You can do it without being spotted, but if you take any longer than what I did, then he will spot you and he will start gunning for you. So the glass jar holds the acid safely. Now we need to carry it on back through this area and get to the padlock that is a little bit corroded. So I'm being very patient here, just waiting for him to leave, because he's still technically in the area. Just double checking my sanity and my health to make sure I'm alright. And so I'm all good. And so I'm pretty sure that no monsters will spawn in for the rest of the area up until we break the lock. Because that's one of the things you have to remember about Amnesia, is that it's not so bad when you realise that a lot of the monsters, apart from a few encounters in the game, they pretty much always despawn the moment the moment you hear them and you get into cover and you leave them alone, they're usually alright. So you want to head off, I can't see shit, but you want to start heading towards the right side. You want to avoid the storage and just go straight ahead. So you want to hang a right, but you don't want to go completely to the right. Look for this area here where you've got the chair out the front of the, out of the path that leads right here. And you want to look to cistern entrance. That's when you know you found it. So stick to the right side, but don't go completely right. Just avoid those cell areas. Put the acid over the lock. Hammer or chisel, break it, and the moment that happens you need to open up the door and immediately go through it. Otherwise the monster spawns behind you, and if you take longer than what I did, then yeah, it'll see you and start gunning for you. But you should be alright. So this is the entrance to the cisterns, and now we're in chapter 4. Or at least that's what I presume is chapter 4. I'd have to actually look up a list of all the different chapters to see if it actually like holds any value, if I'm correct about what all these chapters are, because I always assumed chapter 1 was when you first wake up in the castle, and it ends with the water monster chase, and chapter 2 begins in the back hall, and it ends when you go down the elevator and end up in the prison ward. and Chapter 3 begins in the prison ward, and it ends right now where you've come into the Cisterns, and Chapter 4 is the whole Cisterns area, and Chapter 5 will begin when you go down into the sewers, and Chapter 6 will be when you have to deal with the transept and the choir and finding all the old pieces, and I imagine Chapter 7 would be when you're in the prison, when you get imprisoned, after being jumped by all those, actually, now that I think about it, I think those basic monsters are called grunts. I think they're called grunts. And now that I think about it as well, I think the water monsters are called krakens, which is a bit strange because, you know, it's pretty far from what a kraken actually is, so I don't know why it's called that. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure that is the final chapter as well. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I assume it is. So, yeah, don't get too worried about losing tons of progress because, yeah, you should be right. So, don't go down to the entrance of the sewers because you don't have the antidote for it. But before you get there, you'll notice like a black sort of liquid is pouring out the side of one of the pipes. So you need to put the jar in front of it to grease this thing here. And then you can pull the lever down so you can get the ladder to come down. But the pipe's blocking it. So you need to lift the lever up and down a couple times, and it'll break and smash the pipe out of the way. And when you do that, you'll be able to climb up. And when you climb up, you've got a couple different paths you can go to. I forgot what the name of it is. I think it's the chancel, although I could be wrong about that. But there's also a machine room which controls the different platforms that you can move down. The control room. So you can move these platforms down. Only one of them comes down, the other one stays stuck. You need to solve the control room puzzle if you want to get it to move again. And you can do it immediately, or you can go on through here. I'm going to leave it alone for the time being, and I'm going to go in through this area here that I've already got with the bridge lowered, because it's nice and safe and easy, and you can find a couple of useful items. No, so it's the cistern. Now, what might freak you out if this is your first time going through, or if you're always curious, I swear that there is a water monster in here, but for some reason it doesn't attack you, because you'll immediately notice that there's all these different ways you have to jump on the different torn out pieces of rock and all that. But if there should have been like a water monster area, it should have been this one. And maybe along the way it was once that, but because you can hear it and you can hear the splashes, but the music doesn't play, so you would think that, you know, it's trying to trick you. But no, it actually just doesn't show up. That's why I'd imagine that the water monster is stuck in this like weird sort of concrete box type of structure. And I always assumed there was more to it, but I don't think there is. It's the weirdest thing. See, it's going to be a couple of like hidden items here and there, whether it's tinderboxes or oil lying around. Make sure you don't miss those. So just kind of jump around, check in behind boxes and stuff like that. It's a pretty relaxing area. Like, did you see that? The splash in the water? So there is a water monster in here, but for some reason it just doesn't attack you, and I don't know why. Like, maybe someone can explain that, or, you know, there's some explanation of it somewhere on the internet, but I don't know why it is the way that it is. And it's just baffling, really. So the key thing here is that there are 3 valves you need to turn. And the first one, which I just turned, is pretty easy. When you go in through the main entrance of the cistern here, off to the right, it's pretty simple. Just do some platforming and get to it. The one on the left here, the only thing you really have to figure out is that there's a couple of rocks lying around. You pick one up, you go up to the bridge area, and you need to toss it up to the chain, and it breaks the chain and sends it falling down. And then you can move on through and turn the valve. The third one, which is a bit further on ahead, there's some steam that blows out of these pipes. You need to wait for the steam to dissipate and then go through it immediately. But just keep in mind you don't have a lot of time to actually go through it before it changes again. And it doesn't cause a ton of damage, but if you get hit a couple of times, it'll start to leave a nasty wound. So, you know, make sure you're careful with that. And you don't need to go back that way once you picked up what you need to, but it's just in case you fall down by accident and you need to get back up again. There's another valve that you can turn where you can actually turn off the steam. So in case you fall down, you can go back up that same way again, but you don't have to worry about the steam. And I think I do get hit by it by accident. Yeah, look at that. Just how sudden it is. You've only got 1 second to go through. It's really unfair, I think, but yeah, you just turn that, so if you fall down, you don't have to worry about getting burned by the steam again. And I was just double checking my wounds, and it hasn't done any damage, but if you got hit again, it definitely would do some damage. So yeah, there's a note here, and I believe there's also something else lying around. I could be wrong though, but there's just another valve to turn, and that's it. And when you're done with that, we're going to go to the control room. We're going to solve the puzzle in that control room, and we're going to get the last, I want to say, platform lowered down, so we can go into the morgue. And the morgue is quite a notorious place for, potentially losing your sanity if you spend too long in those rooms. You know what rooms I'm talking about. Or if you look too long at all the bones and the bodies, then, it could definitely leave a lot of, it could definitely scar your sanity quite badly, especially since most of the chapter is relatively stress-free. You don't have to worry too much about losing your sanity at all, really. But the morgue in particular sends it all crashing right back down. And it's also where you get introduced to your first encounter with the brute. Like, you've heard it a couple of times throughout the game, but the morgue is going to be where you first have your proper encounter with the brute. And the brutes can bust down doors in one shot. They can kill you in one shot. They're very fast. They're pretty hyper-aware compared to all the others. They're extremely dangerous. So, yeah, brutes are definitely to be avoided. And you'll have to deal with a brute down in the sewers the whole time. And then you'll have to deal with a brute again in the choir. And you'll potentially have to deal with a brute in the... I forgot what the name of it's called. But it's the room outside of the inner sanctum. I forgot what it's called, but I'll be able to see what it is. I think it actually is called the chancel, although I could be wrong. In any case, I found a way to overcome that one in particular by either baiting him out and getting him to chase me, and then I just go back into the previous area, into the nave, and I despawn him, or I just despawn him anyway by going back through and, leaving that to be that. So in the control room, there's a couple of different puzzles you've got to solve. The first one of these is that one room already has been solved for you. The other one is just you've got to turn these valves around until the weights get lifted and hoisted up in the air, and then when you're going to do it slowly, because when you hear the click, that's when you know you're going to stop. There's also 3 different pipes that you can see me hauling around. You need to get them to the other side of the control room so that you can complete one other side of the wall. There's going to be another puzzle as well where you have to turn the different levers in order to get the... I don't know what it's called, but there's like this cylinder that gets pushed down into the ground further, and you need to get it stuck into the ground. But you can usually just move the levers up and down to see which one moves it up and which one moves it down, and then that should tell you what you need to do. Pretty simple stuff, really. So with this, just slowly turn until you hear the clicking noise. If you can't quite hear it, you're playing with no volume, just follow along with the same size of what I'm getting mine to, and you should be alright. As long as you've got 2 of them correctly, you can turn the third wheel as fast as you want, and it'll correct itself automatically. It's all good. And yeah, in the final room, you'll have to take those 3 pipes and organise them in a different sequence until it all fits. It's a little awkward on controller because I don't quite know what the button is to rotate them, but on keyboard and mouse it's a lot easier to deal with. And once you're done with all those puzzles, when you try to go back through these areas, when you're trying to turn one of the wheels to open up the door, because the door slowly closes, then you'll need to use a wooden crank that you can find in one of the rooms in order to replace that damaged wheel, and you just leave the crank in there so you can get back through. So this is a pretty simple room, really. It's just one giant puzzle. I'll have a lot more to say about them all, because right now I'm kind of talking out of my ass. Underneath one of these stairs there's some oil, and I think there's a tinderbox in that I may or may not have already picked it up, but there should be a tinderbox in the control room as well. But again, like I said, it saves at the beginning of every chapter automatically, so if you die you just go back to the beginning of the chapter. So just remember, if you're familiar with what the concept of permadeath is, then this whole game on hard mode is basically permadeath per chapter rather than full game. So you don't have to worry about it at all. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a drink here because my throat's getting real dry. But while I've got a bit of downtime before the morgue, I'll discuss a bit more about Chapter 6 and the choir and why it's so dangerous. Because I think it's important to know that before you actually get into it. And I'll discuss it again once we get to that point, but yeah, right now it's just kind of a quiet moment. You know, I guess I would kind of like to talk about the story and all that, but this is more so about how to beat the game on hard mode. All in all, I still think this game is amazing. I think it's got a really great story, and Daniel's a really good protagonist, I think, despite not being able to talk all that much. Like, well, not in-game, but like talking in flashbacks and before. I just think it's a really fascinating premise to have this guy who's like really nice and really civil, but then he's forced to do some really horrible things in order to save himself, until he realizes that what he's done is far more evil than anything anyone could have ever been capable of, and it would have been better to just let him die. But since he is alive, he realizes he's also been manipulated, and so at the very least he can have his revenge before that. And when it comes to the endings of the game, if you don't know, there's 4 different endings to the game. The first one, probably the most common one, is you can push over the pillars to stop Alexander's ritual, and so you can get to walk out of Brennenburg Castle alive. The shadow is satisfied that you gave Alexander to it, and so you've warded off the spirits, and so the shadow lets you go free. You're free of the curse of the orb, and you basically get to leave Brennenburg, and even though you've done horrible things, and you know that now, you get to go home, and you get to see your sister, and you get to start again, or try to find your purpose again, and it's really nice. I'm not really a big fan of the true ending of the game, where it's more or less the same, but you let Alexander complete his ritual, but instead of letting him go through the portal, you send Agrippa's head through it, which is a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, when you put Agrippa's head through the portal, you're basically sending him back to his realm, and Alexander gets denied, but then Daniel in the process gets killed, because you denied the shadow the chance to have Alexander. And so because of that, the shadow kills you, but then Agrippa and his friend Wire, I think his name is, in their like weird spirit forms or whatever, they actually manage to find a way to save your life, so you get to live with them in their dimension, sort of thing. And there isn't much that comes of it. It's a pretty beautiful ending, all things considered, when it comes to music and the way it's presented, even though it's very basic. I just think it's a pretty fascinating ending, and definitely the second best, but to me the revenge ending is definitely the best. The third ending is you let Alexander complete the ritual, which, it's not hard to figure out how to interrupt it, but I think it's just a matter of you're playing the game, you're seeing what awful shit Daniel did, and even though Alexander definitely is sympathetic as a villain, and you can understand why he's doing what he's doing, and he's trying to get home to his wife and his family and all that, he doesn't belong here on Earth, he's been trying for many centuries. If you sympathise with him and think Daniel's the monster, then you can let Daniel die, and the shadow gets to kill you, and your torment's finally over. But Alexander gets to go free. But even though it sounds like it's being said in a real condescending tone, like, thank you, my friend, your sacrifice won't be forgotten, you will be celebrated forever, it sounds evil, but in all honesty it's really heartwarming, because Alexander realises that you are now aware of just how horrible Daniel is as a person, or at least what he's become and turned into, and you realise that, even though it's not what you wanted, you are ultimately too far gone, and you're letting Alexander get away, and he's not going to forget what you did for him, willingly stopping to let the ritual happen. And so even though there is definitely a part of him that's like, you deserve this after what you've done and how far you've gone, even though I kind of manipulated you into doing it, there's still a part of him that's really grateful that Daniel understood that he'd gone too far, and ultimately this is just what has to happen, and Alexander will remember Daniel fondly and at least try his best to remember him. So it's not entirely good or evil or whatever, but yeah. So now we're in the morgue. Make sure you go down the left side so you can pick up the copper tube, and then you need to go back down the hallway and take the right side. So yeah, and there is a secret ending which has a similar outcome, where the shadow kills Daniel and Alexander completes his ritual, but it's when you get imprisoned. You can just sort of sit there and wait for like 10 minutes or something, and then slowly but surely the shadow starts to take over. And if you wait long enough, then the shadow takes over the entire cell, and you can't get out of the prison cell, and so it just kills you slowly. It's really horrifying, but I think it's pretty funny that they allow you to do that. So this here is where you need to complete a vaccine. So there's this body here who's immune to the poison that's down in the sewers that you need the antidote for. So you need to get the hollow tube, you need to put the hollow needle through it so that you can create like a syringe of some kind, but before you can stick it inside the guy's head, you need to use the drill from the drill parts. Now, there is nothing of value in these rooms to pick up, but I'm still looking around anyway just in case, but your sanity drops super fast when you're in these rooms, especially when you look at the bodies. So do your best not to look at the bodies. So combine the needle with the tube to create a syringe, but before you can use the syringe you need to put the drill, and I think the drill will break after you do this. So drill into his head, get the syringe and wait for the hole to be made, and then put the syringe into his head, and then you just need to interact with the syringe to give yourself the antidote. So I'm just double checking my sanity to make sure I'm alright. So click on it, your sanity will start to go down a little bit, but you'll be immune to the poisons down in the sewers area. Now, in this section here, the moment you start heading for that door to get out, the brute shows up and starts to slam the door, and he's bashing through it, and normally he bashes down the doors a lot easier than what he's doing right now. Normally he's way better at doing it, but it's just because if he bashed down the door immediately, you wouldn't be able to get away no matter what. So I'm hanging out in this room here. So I'm making sure the doors, yeah, you got to make sure the door's closed. I think the door closes by itself, whether you do it or not. And so what ends up happening is when he starts bashing in the door, you need to pick one of the two rooms. You need to hide in those rooms for the best chance of survival, because I do believe he wanders into the room itself. So hide in one of these two rooms. Don't look at the bodies. Just go into the corner of the room, look at the wall, and you can keep the lamp on if you want. Because at this point, you've already gone through the darkest areas in the game, and you don't need to worry too much about the lamp. Because if anything, it just brings attraction to all these other areas. But you can see my sanity starting to deplete again. It's dangerously low. My vision's all hazy. So I thought he left, but as it turns out, as I was going back towards the entrance, he hadn't left. He just wandered down the other hallway. Now, I'm pretty sure he does leave inevitably, but I just had to get out of that room because it was draining my sanity. The rooms that I was in with the body, they had the syringe put it in and everything. That door was destroyed, so if he wandered back through there, I would have been trapped and nowhere to go. So I just decided to take a chance on it. So finally I'm leaving, and this was stupid. I tried to jump, but because my sanity is all low and like my vision's all blurry and draggy, it kind of messes with my vision. And so I end up going through my laudanum quite a bit just to try and heal all those wounds. But my sanity is still dangerously low, so I'm desperately searching around for an entrance down to the sewer area before I end up carking it. And I keep the lamp on just in case the darkness is too much. And so my sanity is starting to clear up again, and so I go down to the sewers. And I believe this is the beginning of a new chapter. And because I can't hear anything, I'm pretty sure there is like a bit of clarity now. Like my sanity is going back up again. I'm pretty sure. Yep, there it is. Now, this beginning section here, I swear it's never happened to me before, but I do get spotted by the brute and chased. When you go down this ladder, you're going to end up in a bunch of water. So what you need to do is crouch down and slowly move towards the front of where you're going down the path. But stick to the left a little bit as well, and just keep your head down because I'm sprinting a little bit. But then I hear him as soon as I get down, and I go into the corner and look away because I'm expecting him to walk away. And so I keep hearing him, and I hear him loud, and I'm looking around, I'm like, holy shit, he's right there. So I take the risk because I'm like, there's no way he's not going to see me. So I run and I jump. So if you're in the same situation as me, when you run towards the ladder, make sure you jump before you grab onto it. Because when you jump and click on to grab the ladder, you'll at least be high enough above him that he won't be able to hit you properly. And as soon as you do that, he completely despawns. It is the faster way to get through this section, but typically he stops in the middle of the room and just keeps on going off to the right. Now I don't know why he got triggered like that, because I swear even though I was sprinting through the water, I didn't do it all that much and he was quite far away, so I don't know how he could have heard me, but yeah, just either don't make that same mistake that I did, make sure you stay crouched and move carefully through the water. Otherwise, you can bait him into chasing you. Just make sure you get up the ladder and get away from him. And so as you're going through these different hallways here, you'll want to take the left side first, because it leads you to a gear room where you've got to change the levers to match whatever slows down the turbines at the front to get them to slow down. And you need to slow them down enough so that you can stick a rusty pipe through it. And the rusty pipe is located on the right side of the turbine. So the moment you solve this puzzle here and figure out how to do it. I thought you needed to make it go faster, but as it turns out you need to make it go slower. I just remembered it. So you need to move the left lever pretty much to the far left side and the right lever to the far right side. That way it'll slow down to its lowest it can go. But then as soon as you try to leave, then the brute will show up again. And so as soon as that happens, you need to get back in the room and you need to close the door immediately. And just find the tightest corner you can snuggle your way into and just sit down in there. And if you have to, just turn away and look at it. Keep the lamp on for as long as you have to, but then as soon as you hear that door getting pounded on, meaning it's about to be broken, turn off the light immediately. Because as soon as that door gets pounded once by the brute, it'll break open, and if you've still got the lamp on when he goes inside, or if he gets tempted by the light, then yeah, he'll find you. So my sanity is already extremely low despite going to a whole new area, so that's not good, but you know, I'm doing alright so far. So we're just waiting for him to leave, and as soon as we can't hear anything anymore, we're going to wander back out, and we're going to go to the right side, pick up a pipe, we're going to take it back into the middle, stick it in the turbine so we can jam it up and we can move on through, and then we go to the next area, and then we have one more encounter with the brute where he's just trying to search for us, and then we just hide from him, and then we've got one more section which I almost mess up, but I managed to narrowly save myself. And it all comes from me trying to retrieve an item. It's quite a funny sequence of events. I don't know how well it's going to come into, how it's going to turn out with the window preview being turned into a full video, because right now I can barely see anything. God, commentary makes me so thirsty, goddamn. So yeah, this is the pipe you want. Just grab it, get a right angle on it, move it up and down until it breaks. If you follow the path that I did, you shouldn't encounter the brute again until the next part. So just move up to the turbine, equip the pipe, stick it down the side,
What are you doing? Let me go!
get some sanity back, and I've got a slight headache, but it's not the end of the world. And once you've cleared the section here, you want to move on through, and where you want to get to has been blocked off. The brute will smash its way through there, and that'll clear the way for you. But for the time being, you need to go up the right here. You need to go into this room, and there'll be a grunt with its body torn to pieces, which I imagine the brute did something to that. So do your best not to look at those body parts. There's some laudanum in there if you need it. But when you go into this room, I don't think there's anything actually in here. But you need to go in here in order to go back out the room. And when you go back out of the room, it'll trigger the brute to spawn. He'll smash through the pipes and he'll start making his way towards this room. So yep, there's the signal. Run back into the room and close it immediately, because if you're a couple seconds later than what I just did, then he will be on your ass. So turn the lamp on. The left side gives you a bit more cover. So just keep the lamp on to keep your sanity going, but then as soon as you hear him approach or you hear that door get bashed down, turn off the light immediately and just hang out in the corner here and move to the left. And as soon as the music disappears or starts to dissipate, or you can wait about 10 to 15 seconds and then the brute will already be gone. And so he's going to wander back towards his original position through the gate that he just smashed, through all those pipes. And so we're going to follow him through there, and when we get into there, what it's going to lead to is going to be like I don't know what you call it, but it's another one of these like sort of square structures, rectangular structures that are sitting in the middle of this area of the sewers, and you can wander around the outside of it to both sides. Now the way out of the sewers is being guarded by that brute, and what you need to do is you need to cause a distraction down one side of this rectangular structure so that he goes and investigates, and then you go down the other side, right past him. Because I don't think you can go down one side, chuck a rock, let's say on the opposite side of where you are, have him investigate it, and then sneak right behind him. I think his awareness is too high. So what you need to do is cause a distraction down the right side, get him to chase after those distractions, and then you need to go down the left side. So the ideal thing to do is to pick up a couple of the rocks nearby. You need to throw one down his end, just close enough that you can draw him out into the open and away from the entrance. Or away from the exit, sorry. But that's not going to be enough, because he may still catch up to you. Because as soon as you go for the exit, if he hasn't seen you, he will see you the moment you go through the door, or he'll know where you are. So you need to grab a rock, move to the right hand side, you need to throw it a bit farther down, you need to pick up another rock and throw it down this end here where I'm at, so that he gets as far away as possible. But I see the laudanum, I'm trying to go for it, and so I'm trying to jump up to try and grab it, but it actually causes a splash, and he hears me. And he's wandering down this way. I'm like, oh shit. Because that's laudanum that I could have used. So yeah, pro tip, if you want to get that laudanum, please do not jump to try and get it. You will bounce off the rocks and you will cause a splash. So I quickly go down the left side, and then I throw a rock down into the corner where I cause that splash, hoping it distracts him, and it does. So he's moving away slowly. So I'm just walking normally without sprinting. I'm just walking normally. And then as soon as I get out of the water, I start sprinting. And as soon as I get to that first door and I open it up, he notices I'm here. And so I close it behind me. Now, even though he can destroy them in one go, it does slow him down enough. So you can potentially outrun him, but I don't take that risk. So you jump towards the ladder, and make sure you jump. Because that way, if you grab onto the ladder after the jump, then you're up high enough that he can't really hit you. Because even if he manages to catch up with you, and he's going in for the hit, if you jump and grab that ladder, there's a good chance that he'll miss. So yeah, just keep moving your way up this ladder, and we're coming up onto the finale of the game, or at least close to it. Another 40 minutes to go. Most of Chapter 6 is pretty easy. It's just about balancing where you go to and being careful not to get caught up. So on the one hand, the path I take first in this chapter is really handy and really helpful. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder, like, yeah, sure, I get rid of the brute and everything, so I don't have to worry about it near the end of the game, and that's probably worth it, I guess. But it sapped so much of my sanity away before I could actually like solve a puzzle and get my sanity back into the crystal clear stage. It ended up working out for the best anyway, so I'd still recommend doing what I do, but it's more or less a happy accident. Because, yeah, for the most part, whether it's called the Chancel or whatever it's called, there's nothing in it to collect really. It's just an item you're already going to find along the way anyway. But the main objective of this chapter is to find all the pieces of the orbs. There's 3 of them in the transept, which is pretty easy. You just got to go into the torture rooms, avoid interacting with anything, avoid looking at anything horrific, and just only focus on finding the orbs. And yeah, for the most part, that's pretty easy. The choir is the only hard part of this chapter, really. And it's the only really hard part of the rest of the game, actually. Everything else is just nerves. And I'll talk more about the choir when I actually get to it. Because before you actually get into the choir, there's an entrance to the choir. And there's a note you can find on a sacrificial table. You want to avoid picking that up. Because I don't think it drains your sanity. It's part of a flashback, but it takes a few minutes out of your run that it saves you time on if you don't feel like doing it. And I didn't feel like going through it or doing it, so I just left it alone, and it worked out for the best anyway. Because I think it does also slightly drain your sanity. So it's best just to avoid it in case. So there's a gripper hanging up there. I've never actually played the game and tried to complete it without pulling the switch. It'd be kind of interesting to see what happens if I didn't, but I figured I might as well anyway, just because I like his voice actor, and I think he's pretty fun and pretty cheery whenever I go see him. So the first thing I want to do is go to the left here, the oil and table, look up, open up that trapdoor, and you want to jump up and click on the gear to move it up again. So now everything's working. So we want to go back up the stairs the way we came, back to the, what do they call it, back to the well. And in one of the rooms, it has a couple of different levers that you need to pull, and that'll open up the access doors to the transept and to the choir. And we're actually going to go into the like prison cell section of the nave, and then we're going to go out through into the chancel, or at least that's what I think it's called, and we're going to be looking around there and making sure we clear the brutes so we don't have to worry about them there, and then we're going to move back to the transept, and then we're going to help get our sanity back through there by picking up all the orb pieces we find in there, which are 3 of them, and then we're going to go to the choir, which is pretty much sure it may as well be the finale to this chapter, and about the hardest thing left in the game. But there's something else in the final chapter of the game that, you may not understand it, or you may get panicked and rush into it, because funnily enough, I actually failed a couple of times when I did hard mode for the first time on this game, like years and years ago. I think it might have been like 4 or 5 years ago I did hard mode, but yeah, I remember it being a really tricky thing, because as soon as you get all the orbs together after you've been kidnapped and you escape, you put all the orbs together with the bucket of tar and you put it into the the pedestal, or whatever it's called. You put the orb pieces together, you get it all formed, and it opens up the way forward so you can enter the inner sanctum. But the problem is, when the barrier disappears and you can go... what I was doing is I was sprinting directly at the dissipation effect, and as soon as it disappeared and vanished, I ran forward across the bridge into the inner sanctum and I opened up the door to the next area. But if I'd waited a couple more seconds, it would have given me like a blue flash over my screen to show that I'd solved a puzzle, and it would have taken my sanity, it would have lowered my, raised my sanity, so that it was back to slight headache or crystal clear, because when you go into the next area, into the inner sanctum, you've got to do a couple of blood sacrifices where you just jab your hand, and you draw blood, and then you've got to stand on this sort of like, I guess it's like a pentagram type of symbol, and then you got to stand on it for a couple of seconds or so, until your screen kind of like folds in and moves out again, like a weird sort of like zoom effect, and you got to do that twice. But see, I didn't wait for the portal, or sorry, the barrier to completely dissipate and give me the sanity increase. I didn't wait for that, and so because of that, I ended up getting killed in that final chamber section, which was a little bit of a kick in the balls. But luckily, I'd made a manual save before then. So I did have to go through a couple of different cell sequences again, which was a bit of a shame, but at least I knew what to expect and what to do then, and I learned from my mistake, and that's how I did it. So, it could be worse. By the way, there's nothing at all in these cells. There's a couple of them that have like a supernatural effect that gets triggered, and it can weaken Daniel's sanity. So, it's for the best you just don't open these cells at all. If you're going to do what I'm doing, and trying to clear out the brute so you don't have to worry about him in the final encounter in the game, which is what I would recommend doing, then by all means just skip all these cells and go straight on through. So you picked up some meat here, and it's only really good if you want to go for saving Agrippa. Like, by all accounts, if you want to play hard mode and get the ending where you save Agrippa's life, this isn't the video for you, because it won't show you where to find everything and where to put everything together, because I know how to do all that. It is a chancel, yeah. So I know how to save Agrippa and all that. I think a lot of people who have already played this game know how to do it by now, but I'm just simply going with my favourite ending of the game, which is the revenge ending, and it just so happens to be one of the easier endings to get. So I don't bother going out of my way to find all the different pieces, especially since a lot of what you do to free Agrippa results in the loss of sanity, like whether it's 1 or 2 points of it. So for the odd chance that I may end up getting killed in the final section, I think there's really only 1 or 2 clear paths that you can take with the different order of things in order to make sure that you can escape relatively unharmed. So if you didn't see what was happening here, the monster wanders off to the right side, and so I'm wandering off to the left side. It's definitely possible that he's already despawned. So I'm just going to go on through here into this room. I'm going to pick up all these notes. I'm going to grab the bucket of tar, although that's only useful for the orb, where the orb's supposed to go. I can't get into this room here because it's locked, but it'll be unlocked once we get to near the end of the game. So I'm going to go back out there, and I'm pretty sure he's still hanging around. That monster's still hanging around, but he's like hanging out in that room there, or he's wandering around somewhere. Just on the odd chance that it is a trap, I'm going to go back the way I came, No, actually, no, I tell a lie. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to put the bucket of tar into where the orb's supposed to go. And then I'm going to run back out. And then I'm going to go back to the prison section of the nave. And then I'm going to run back into the room, into the chancel. And then I'm going to go down the right side where the monster was wandering. Yeah, there's a pedestal. So you can see here I've got enough 2 manual saves. So if you haven't found the tinderboxes that I have had, well then you've got enough for 1 manual save. So with the knowledge that you can actually get an automatic save at the beginning of each chapter, what I would recommend if you had to make a manual save is make it before you get into the choir. You know, at the very least. So that way when you clear the choir and you get to the prison section where you get locked up in the last like 20 minutes of the game, at least make sure that the game will save then if you get killed by any chance. Because yes, if you had to make a manual save anywhere, you know, I would say maybe the storage, but if you're willing to take that risk, because the storage is more about intimidation than anything else, make sure you save at the beginning or halfway through the prison section, and then save again once you get up to the choir. So there's really only 2 parts of the game I'd recommend you save in. So I'm just avoiding all the different torture areas and all the different like implications of it all, and I'm focusing on finding things. There's some more oil there. That's nice, I guess, but I use my oil quite a bit in the last parts of these games, or the last part of this game. So I use it pretty recklessly. Not that I need to at all, but I still do it anyway. So maybe I'm completely like... Maybe I completely misremember what's going on here, but I could have sworn I went in and out of these different areas and he was despawned, but maybe I've already missed it. Maybe I've already done it before, I just completely forgot. Too busy yapping on, just trying to find commentary for the next half an hour before the video's over. I need another drink now. God damn. Okay, so we're going off to the right here, although if you're wandering in from Agrippa's side of things, it's technically the left-hand side. This is where you would hang the meat from if you wanted to get the bone back, but with the DNA of the water monster on the bone, it's a key ingredient to helping Agrippa. Just like in the transept, how up in Alexander's office there's going to be a piece of string that you can tie to your glass jar, and you can lower it down into one of the drains where blood's been drained out, and you can get technically what is called vitae, and you can use that as part of the recipe and ingredients needed to free Agrippa. But no such luck. I'm not going to bother doing all that. So going into the transept, if you go upstairs into Alexander's office, I think there's some oil you can find as well as a piece of string. So the oil's nice if you want it. Otherwise, yeah. I also get a bit freaked out whenever I see Alexander's like portraits and paintings on the walls, because supposedly it only works if your sanity is low enough. But if you look at that portrait long enough when your sanity is low, Alexander's face actually changes to look more demented and demonic. I think it's a pretty cool detail actually. So I'm going to the top of the office, up the spiral staircase. I shit you not, the first few times I played this game, I had absolutely no idea that this was here. Because the staircase is so thin and it blends into the background really well. So you can find some string here. You can find another note. You can find another one of these like memory, like cylinder things. Some oil there. And that's pretty much it. So I'm sorry if you can hear some noise in the background, more noise going on. But otherwise there's 3 rooms in the transept. They're all torture rooms. Just avoid looking at them the best you can. Don't click on any of the devices that might trigger any sort of words to pop up describing the torture. Don't interact with the different things, because if you do, then it may cause Daniel's sanity to weaken, because even though his sanity may not be in the toilet, which is what it looks like when it's like this, yeah, so like the blurry screen and the slow movements when the camera's turning, all the perspectives shifting really slowly, That's what it should be like when his sanity drops down to the lowest point before death. It's not quite there yet, but I am getting to that point because of these torture rooms. So you need to make sure that when you're moving through them, you move through it quickly and know where to pick up everything. So that one was pretty easy to find. You just find it in the corner of the room. The good way to look out for the orbs is just to look for the odd glow. There'll be like a glow on the ground or around a pillar or something. So going into here, you'll find the piece of the orb in this cupboard here. And as soon as you pick up all 3 pieces of the orbs in the transept, you'll get a bit of a increase to your sanity, which is nice. Now, the choir is typically a really tough part for me, given how much I've talked about it, because I have such a bad history with it, even though I've played this game to death several times over. The choir always gave me trouble, but this time through the game, it actually didn't have much of a problem with the choir at all, because I decided to experiment a little bit on the fly, just to try and make sure everything was alright. And I actually managed to figure out some pretty interesting things about it. So the orb in this room here is to the far right as soon as you go in, taking advantage of the flashback voices we're hearing. It gives me a better chance of keeping my sanity while I move through the area, and making sure that I can pick up the orb piece and get my sanity back up as well. So it didn't raise it up by much, but it definitely helped. So by the way, you don't have to worry about pulling your lamp out during this sequence, because even though it is technically dark in this room, the lights from the outside are creating enough that you don't have to worry about losing sanity from being in the dark. So you do actually get your sanity back to full from being so low down if you find all the orb pieces. So that's really good, and we want to keep it that way. So we're going to leave the transept area and we're going to move off to the choir, or at least the choir entrance. And through the choir entrance there's a couple of rooms that we can investigate to find some items in, but there's one in particular we need to avoid. So moving on through here, just checking the drawers, making sure we're not missing anything. There's just a note more about the recipe on how to save a gripper. It's one of those memory cylinders. There's also some laudanum if we need to heal our wounds. All is good. And it wouldn't really apply, because apart from the odd bit of fall damage, I mean, you know, if you get hit by a brute, you're basically dead. So we're coming up close to the end of the playthrough, or for me it was a playthrough, but I guess it's technically a walkthrough. And it's really not that hard, guys, so you don't need to worry about it so much. By the way, this is what I'm talking about. Don't pick up this note here, because it will drain your sanity over the course of a few minutes. I'd rather just avoid it altogether, because I'm crystal clear with my sanity, and that's kind of how I want to keep it. But sadly there's nothing of use in these rooms, so I'm just going to move on ahead and into the actual choir itself. And this is where things get a little bit tough, because you won't be able to see shit, but they'll be able to see you. So when you go in here, you'll immediately realise that everything's all purpley and pink. You can't see very far in front of you. In fact, I can barely see even on the preview screen. I hope there's a way that I can fix this up a little bit somewhere, but yeah, you'll see it a lot easier going forward. Now, there is a brute in here, and he wanders around. It's quite a big area, so there's a good chance you can bypass him in a lot of areas. But as soon as you wander in here and Alexander begins talking to you, just hang out by the entrance, because even if the brute spots you and comes charging towards you, you can go back through the door and escape. But even when you go back in, he'll still be around somewhere. So you can't get him to despawn, unfortunately. So just wait for Alexander to stop chatting, and what you want to do is you want to hang a left. So the layout from the door here is that off to the right there's a bridge that leads off over a gap, and there's another bridge right beside it that leads upwards. Technically it doesn't mean anything because, well, it all leads to the same sort of corner area, but then outside of them there's a couple of other paths that branch off almost into like an H shape. So if you stick to the far left and hug the wall and you go along it, you'll come to a door, and that door leads you into one of the torture rooms. You can tell them that they're rooms by a couple of torch lights lighting the way to a different room. Make sure to close the doors behind you, just in case. So you come into here, and this is the Iron Maiden room, and there is an orb piece in here, but do your best to navigate through this room. This is laudanum as well. Do your best to navigate the room without getting in front of the Iron Maiden, because if you do get in front of the Iron Maiden or you click on it, it'll spring open and it'll cause a supernatural event, and when it does, it drains your sanity. And this is already draining your sanity by being in this room itself, so make sure you're quick. So off to the back left, you've got a piece of the orb. Just leave this room, don't interact with the Iron Maiden, don't get near it. And at this point, I didn't know exactly how many pieces there were, if there were 3 in the transept and 4 in the choir, but as it turns out, there's 3 in both areas, so you're all good. So you go out through this area here, and I can't see shit, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be hugging the far right side of the wall and trying to get back to the main door, just in case I run into the brute by mistake. I can go back out through the exit and get through just fine. But when I get back to the entrance, I'm going to be hearing the brute, and I'm going to just be barely seeing him in the distance. So I can't properly see him myself through this preview screen, but whether the video comes out looking better and you'll be able to see him, or maybe you'll be able to see him in your playthrough. If you get anywhere near these bridges, he gets triggered to come over towards them, so you need to run back immediately towards the entrance. And if you're sprinting back towards the entrance and he sees you, and you can hear the music pick up, just go back through the door and just head on through. Otherwise, if you sprint back to the door and he doesn't see you, crouch behind the nearest pillar, keep the light off, and look around the corner of the pillars to see if you can see him. And the moment you see him walk off to the right side, he'll usually be walking along the edge of the bridges to the right. The moment he crosses over the right bridge, don't look at him too long, otherwise he'll know you're there and your sanity will drop heaps. When he wanders off to the right, you can wander forward, but you need to be fast, otherwise he'll wander around the outside of that bridge and around the corner, and he'll come and meet you on the right side, or he'll wander back the way he came and see you. Either way, you should hopefully have enough speed on you with your sprinting to get into the next torture room, and I'm having a really hard time actually seeing anything on this preview screen, but what I'm going to be doing once I see him wander back past the bridges or away from the bridges is I go across the bridges myself, and then as soon as I'm far enough away from the bridges, I'll hug the right hand side of the wall and I'll just keep sprinting through the areas, and I'll just keep to the right side wall and hugging it along until I find one of the torture rooms, which is straight ahead off to the right. Once you cross one of those bridges, it'll be straight ahead and off to the right. And then as soon as I'm done with that torture room and I go back out of it, if I just run straight ahead, there'll be this collapsed pillar, and it'll be cracked in half, but you can see that it kind of makes a gap. It bridges a gap between 2 different areas where there's a big drop, and you can actually cross over that pillar and use it to get to the next torture room really easily. And if you just hug one of the sides of the wall, you can get back to the entrance of the choir really easily and escape. So that's what I'm doing here right now. I've passed the bridges and I'm just hugging the right side wall all the way around the outside of the choir's main hall, and I can avoid him pretty easily. And I'm going to come up to the next torture room. Like I swear I could have... I really wish I could do something to improve the video quality here. I should have upped the brightness while I was playing the game. That really would have helped, but you know, it's intentionally supposed to be a dark game. So hopefully my commentary and all the rambling I'm doing is actually helping you guys, because the choir is definitely a tough section to navigate if you don't know where you're going. But if I can just sort of back it up a little bit and repeat my points, when you go into the choir, wait for Alexander to do his talking, and then hug the left-hand side of the wall, go to the first torture room off to the far left, and then go back the way you came, run to the entrance, and then if nothing happens, wander forward towards one of the bridges, and then if you hear the brute make his signature noise, then sprint backwards to the entrance of the choir, and if he still hasn't started giving chase, then just hide behind one of the pillars and look around it to make sure you can see him, and as soon as you see him wander off to the right, move to the left and get in behind him, just very slowly and carefully, get across one of the bridges, and as soon as you get across one of the bridges, just sprint straight forward and hug the right hand side of the wall until you reach the torture room I just came in, and as soon as you get out of the torture room, don't go back the way you came, just run straight ahead, and you'll come up to a collapsed pillar that's bridging the gap. Because if you fall in the gap, you die, but when the pillar's collapsed, you need to move to the right hand side of the collapsed pillar, you need to jump up to it, and as soon as you're on top of it, you can wander straight across like a bridge, and you can get to the other torture room pretty easily. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. God, this preview screen is so awful, I can barely see shit. So, you know, hopefully I'm actually doing it. Did I do it? I can't tell. I could probably find another way to... Yeah, there goes one of the roomies clapping like an autistic seal. As if anyone cares. So yeah, the next torture room, you can see all those mushrooms on the outside of it. It's a good way to tell. But yeah, as soon as you cross over that collapsed pillar as a bridge, you don't have to go that way. You can go back the way you came and just hug the wall around the right side even more. But the thing is, you'll have another run-in with the brute. And so you have to hide and wait for him to go by. Just to avoid all that drama, you're better off going this way. And now that you've found all the 3 pieces and your sanity's back up, I decide to save it, just in case. So that way I'll come right back here, in case I get caught out by the brute on the way back. I probably should have saved it before I got into the choir, but you know, I was pretty confident in my own abilities to do so, so it's no big deal. So as soon as I come out of that torture room, I'm going to hug the right hand side. I'm going to go away from where I crossed over the pillar. And if I hug the right hand side, I'll eventually come to the massive gap where the bridges are helping you get across, but the bridge is all the way on the other side of the choir. So I'm going to be ducking in and out of these pillars, using them as cover to move. And I'm pretty sure the brute has either completely disappeared or is wandering in a completely different section of the choir. Again, it's really hard to tell. But, you know, if I want to, I could probably just sprint straight ahead, get to the bridge and get over it. But if I ended up running into him, or if he was watching the area near the exit, then, yeah, I don't think there'd be much of a chance for me. Even at full health, he pretty much kills you in one shot, from what I can tell. So the next minute or so is just me going to be carefully navigating back and forth to make sure I don't run into anything as I struggle like crazy to see through the darkness on this preview screen. If I can do something to improve the brightness and all that, I guess I should look at it, because I'm having a really hard time seeing. In fact, while the commentary is running now, I wonder if I can do it. No, I cannot. Okay. There's got to be a setting somewhere that I can do to change it, but I'll just let the gameplay run on as I go. So now that I've crossed the bridge, I'm pretty much just gunning straight for it. Because I crossed over the bridge, that leads straight over rather than the one that's on the edge of it, that links up with the corner. If you just go to that one, you know, you come out of that torture room with the mushrooms in front of it, and you follow the right hand side and the pillars and all that. If you keep following that path along the edge of where it drops off and goes down into the abyss below, then as soon as you come to that first bridge, you just need to go right across the bridge, go straight, and just keep sprinting straight forward, and you'll eventually hit the door that leads you back into the entrance to the choir. And you just run back through these halls, get back to the nave, and this is where things get a little bit strange, because you're actually going to willingly get attacked. So it seems like the shadow must be a little bit mad. So now that we've got all the orb pieces, I'm checking my sanity, a slight headache, that's not so great, but you know, better than nothing, better than what it could be. My health is all good. I got plenty of health if I need it, got plenty of oil. So I'm going to head back through the nave in the prison section, and I'm going to head to the chancel. And when I get through the chancel, as soon as you go up the stairs, and you open the door and you go back out there to where all those bridges are, and that sort of like greenish looking chamber or whatever, there's going to be a bunch of grunts that come and assault you. You can do your best to run back and get through the door and run to the exit, but they'll always like breeze right through it and they'll always catch you. So what you have to do here is just open the door, go out there, and willingly get attacked. Now, I don't look at them in case it ruins my sanity when I wake up, but I don't think it makes much of a difference, honestly. So what's going to happen here is you're not meant to survive this, or you're not meant to get away from them. So they'll knock you down, you'll fall unconscious, and when you wake up, they will have locked you up inside of a prison cell. And so you need to escape that prison cell. And it's pretty easy to do. I'll tell you how to do it. Grab a drink. Not long to go now. Okay. So I'm trying my best not to look at the monster, because again, the more you look at monsters and all that, the more your sanity drains, and so my sanity is not looking super great right now. So you go to the wall on your left, it's weakened, so you've still got all your tools. So you just need to go into your inventory, use the hammer and chisel, crack it open, and then you need to grab the wooden beam on the other side and pull down. And it'll open up the way forward. And when you get on through, you can open up the prison cell on this side. And if possible, try avoiding, there's one particular prison cell you should avoid. There's a note in here, you can pick it up if you want. Now, when it comes to the cell on your left here, don't go in this one, otherwise it triggers something that could potentially ruin your sanity a little bit. It's not a big deal breaker if you go into it by accident, but you know, if you can, just try your best to avoid it. At the very least, just don't look at the dead body, but there is a tinderbox in here if that matters to you. If you need to save again, but again, I've got enough for another manual save, plus one more light source if I need it. Not that I really need it. This prison cell in here contains some laudanum if you need some more health. In fact, you probably do after getting attacked by those guys, but it also has a wooden bucket. And this puzzle here is pretty easy to solve. You just need to attach the wooden bucket to the rope, send it down the well, and when it goes down into the well, it'll fill up with water, and then you need to pull it back out again. And you take the full bucket of water, and you need to pour it down one of the pipes. And then the key will actually fall out and end up on the floor. Then you pick up the key and you can unlock the door to this prison cell, this prison ward area here. And you can start making your way out. So it's explained in one of the notes that the key got dropped in there. So you grab the rusty key and you unlock the way out. And now you have to run all the way through. Now it's very loud and very irritating to deal with, but you know, you don't have to close the doors behind you. You can leave them closed. Oh, sorry, you can leave them open if you want. But yeah, just take the left-hand side, not the right-hand side. It was a big mistake on my part. But yeah, take the left-hand side out of this choice you've got and just keep on going ahead. For those earlier doors, you don't need to close them. But in this section here, you just got to run on through. As long as you keep sprinting and moving ahead, it should be alright. I think the faster you move, the more it catches up to you, up to a certain point. But if you don't sprint, it goes intentionally slower. So the shadow's almost motivating you to keep on going and going and going. And the moment you slow down, it also slows down. So it will eventually catch you if you stop. But as long as you just move at a regular pace, I think you'll be alright. It's not like all those other sequences where you have to sprint for your life, otherwise you're going to get caught. So you don't have to worry too much about that one. It definitely could be a lot worse. Now I suppose I'll bring up this next part here. There's a note you can find on a table when you get out of this. I don't pick it up because it leads to a sequence that lasts a couple of minutes long where it recounts the tale of Daniel and Alexander going to find the final victims of the ritual, which also leads to... also coincidentally happens to be the girl that Daniel killed while True was trying to escape, that you've been hearing in the flashbacks. So right now I've got enough for another manual save, and then a couple more tinderboxes if I need them. So you're back here at the beginning of the well that you escaped from the sewers on. Open up these doors until you find the right one that you need to go through, and you need to get back to the area with a gripper in it. I will say as well that even though I don't have to worry about encountering any more monsters going forward, because I managed to clear out that entire first area at the chancel the first time, and I have no idea, I don't really have much advice if you happen to not go that way at all, or you didn't go that way first, or the brute is still there or still wandering around. The best thing I can suggest is that when you go into the room and you break the machinery, then the brute will be tempted to start wandering into the room to try and search for you. So the best thing you can do is just grab a bunch of the boxes or whatever debris you can find and set up a little, like a tiny little wall, so that when you're trying to run out of the machine room, he'll be wandering across the bridge towards the machine room area. But if you set up like a bunch of boxes and debris and everything, you can hide behind it and you can wait for him to wander into the room and look into a corner, and then you can sneak up behind him and then back out the door. And as soon as you get out the door, you can pretty much sprint the rest of the way, and even if he hears you and turns around and spots you, you're still far enough ahead that you can get away from him. because otherwise if he is there, then he's not going to despawn or go away. You have to sneak past him. So luckily I didn't have to deal with him at all in this sequence, but if the brute is still there, then he won't be here immediately. He'll show up after you've gone into the machine room and you've broken the gears and you're trying to wander back out. So if you see any boxes or chairs or all that lying around, then make sure you set them up in a way where you're giving your body enough cover. And when you give your body enough cover, actually this is where it was. In case the brute showed up, I go into the chancel and I go back into the nave, back into the previous area, and then I go back into the chancel again, because, sorry, I'm silly. All this time I've been talking about it, and I didn't realise it happened till like the end of the game. So if he is in there somewhere in the chancel, then you've caused him to despawn by going back into the nave, but then you go back into the chancel again, and he won't be there anymore. So I didn't hear him or see him, or at least I don't think I did. It's kind of hard to tell because I've got no volume on this end, and at the same time I can't really see shit on this preview screen. But if he was there, even though I couldn't see him or hear him, then he's not there anymore. So now all we have to do is just take a left here. We go into the gear room. There'll be another note we can pick up as well that wasn't there before. Just more about Daniel's story and everything that's going on with him. So now that the door's opened up down there, so we can go down there, pick up like a gear or a rock or something, we can throw it at the moving parts, and it causes the machine to collapse. And so far as we've got for inventory, we've got a good amount of oil on standby if we ever need it, which we don't. We've got plenty of laudanum so we can heal ourselves up. Our sanity's pretty good, and once we clear out the way forward, our sanity should be all good again. So there's nothing left to pick up. We just needed to destroy this machine. So now we can leave, and even though that did a bit of splash damage apparently, it didn't do enough to take off any part of my health, so I'm still all good for that. So now I'm being quite tentative here, making sure that I don't accidentally run into the brute or trigger him when I'm in the middle of a bad spot. But now I just hang a left and go straight forward towards the entrance to the inner sanctum. And now that we've got the orbs all ready to go, the orb pieces, we just go back to the pedestal. And I'm going to shut the door behind me, I believe. No, I'm going to leave it open. Okay. Well, I'm still using my last save here, just in case. Because, ever since I did this the first time, this part's always made me nervous about, just what you can get away with when it comes to the sacrifice part of the inner sanctum. So just take all the orb pieces out of your inventory and stack it all in there. Now that it's all complete. The barrier, now combined with the machine broken, it should be sapping it dry of its energy. Just wait for the barrier to dissipate, and then wait in front of here, don't move, and wait for that blue flash. You can run through it now if you want, like I'm doing right now, but don't activate the door until that blue flash comes on. Now go. So now your sanity's back to the beginning again. But if you wait too long, eventually the shadow will start to come in, and your sanity may drop down a little bit more again. It's not the end of the world if it does. But yeah, now I'm perfectly crystal clear, and that's what we're going to need. So now that we're in the inner sanctum, you run down these stairs, get into the middle, and there's a lever right there. Make sure you pull this lever down so you can close the door. So that way you block out the shadow, and now there's 2 rooms on either side. And in order to do this, you need to go and prick your finger, or at least your hand, on this needle. And then you need to stand on these weird sort of like pentagram looking symbols or whatever it's supposed to be. So I'm just double checking my health to make sure it's alright, because it will do damage to you. And it will cause your sanity to drop as well. So just stand on here, wait for the screen effect to take effect, and then boom, done. And so now just double checking. Yeah, my health's gone down a little bit, so I just use my laudanum to get it back up again. I've gone from crystal clear to a slight headache. So even if you've got a slight headache when you come in here, it's not the end of the world. prick my finger again on the other one, come over here, do the ritual. The effect's done, I move on through, just double checking. Head is pounding, hands are shaking, I've got my health back up. So I need to be fast now. So yeah, I took a little bit of damage from the shadow here, and I got a bit turned around. So now your sanity is completely like at the bottom, and if you take too long to get out of here, then your sanity will drain completely and you will die. So you do need to go through here. And just keep running down the middle, keep on going forward, and then as soon as you hit the orb chamber, you're all good. So your sanity was in the toilet before. If you'd taken more time to be in that inner sanctum a bit longer, it probably would have been the end of it. But now I get a little bit more of my health back from the laudanum, and my sanity's gone back up again. So it's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than it was. And now there's no chance of losing your sanity here or taking damage. All you have to do is just tear down these pillars. So the left and right pillars just tear down by moving it towards Alexander, and the last one you just move to the side. So that right pillar, just push it down towards him. This middle pillar here, turn it to the left, tilt it over, and do the same with this one here. Just push it towards him and knock it down. And that's the end of the game. You've completed the game on hard mode, and potentially no deaths if you got it. But again, you get saves at the beginning of each chapter anyway, automatically, so if you don't save manually, you're still good for a little while, making this game mode a lot easier than it could have been. But thank you for watching, and you take care now as I leave you with the finale.
It was my greatest triumph, and I never looked back. You think I was afraid, fleeing Brennenburg? Quite the contrary. I knew it was my purgatory, hellfire made to wash away my sins. There's no denying the things I've done, but I have paid my tribute. I gave them that awful man. I did the right thing.